Hey, I love you, brother. You know, the Lord is going to do a good work in you regardless, whether you like it or not.
I love you more, Ellie.
Oh,
I really
geez,
do.
nice. That's cool.
I really do.
Okay, so introduce us. What's our opening? Is there
But
a
I
song?
love Ben the most.
Hold on.
You should.
Hold on.
You should.
No,
You should love
there's
him the most.
I feel like I have like a Bible verse or something somewhere in here.
That's good. Well, it's about time. After the 3 episodes, you're trying to bring the Bible up.
Oh my
It's about
gosh.
time.
I know. Hold on. Now I gotta find that. Keep talking. Hold on.
Well, we're just gonna talk
Geez.
about you then.
No, do you have a music intro to the podcast? The one that you did with the outtakes was pretty good intro.
I'm down to use that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that was a
Which-
good intro song. The one
which
that you did
one?
outtakes about the Hermatutnik.
Oh, Ben's one where he has.
Yeah,
But it's
that
hermatutic. It should be
Whatever, dude.
hermatutnik.
whatever. It was
It's-
good. But I'm saying the song and the intro was perfect.
I like my song better than I had earlier.
Oh, you have a
I had a
different
Which
different.
song?
I had a different
Which
one.
song?
The,
You gotta
it's-
send it to me.
the first one that I and you even said it. You're like, oh, I like that song. You even said it.
Oh, but it wasn't a song that went all the way through, like during the whole video. It was just an intro
Yeah.
song.
You're right. Yeah. Then you change. Yeah, you had one that goes all the way through. Man, that video is so good though.
That was great.
That was so perfect. Did you
And
post
then
that, Ben?
Even his
Did you-
face, his
I
facial
know.
expression was like, if you actually pay attention, he does a little smirk. He goes,
Dude, I've shown that. Hey, I've shown that to friends, like not even
Dude.
non-Christian friends, and they were dying.
Oh yeah, everyone I showed it to
Yeah,
was
I
laughing like
actually,
crazy.
I actually shared our 26-minute conversation about disputable matters to a buddy of mine who I trust in the Lord, right? And I'm like, hey, what are your thoughts on something like this? And he knows all the players, right? Because I was trying to gauge, like, so you know who I'm hanging out with. You know Dennis pretty well, so I'm not going to give
He
names.
knows me as well.
He knows you very well too.
Who is he?
I'm not gonna say. He knows all of us,
Tell
right?
us.
And he
Tell
knows
his
your
brother.
he knows your story too,
Yeah,
Dennis,
yeah.
right? So he knows
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
story. And I'm like, so hey, knowing the players I'm involved, how does it make you feel about us? Like, are you questioning our wisdom and like hanging out with this guy? Like, how do you, type of thing? Because I was curious, like, hey, I trust you. I trust your.
No, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. Yeah.
And he was like, hey, it was hard, but kind of seeing how the flow went, like it was actually really good. Like you guys actually talked and it was great.
Yeah.
The conversations were solid. Like, and it was good to really see how things flowed. Like that's actually really good. I could listen to this all day. I'm like, sweet.
That's good. That's good feedback, man. That's really good.
I have buddies that are waiting for us to start uploading.
I'm
Buddies that
hearing
are
that
Christian
people
and
too.
non-Christian.
That's, you know what, and I think that's the goal. Like, I don't think this is going to be just for Christians. Right. And that's,
Oh no.
Yeah.
so even when I did my
I totally
podcast, my
agree.
audio one, it was like, it's a non-Christian approach using biblical framework. That's the idea. Like the theological mindset put into the culture. And like, here's the biblical perspective, guys, even for you non-believers. Like, how do you guys feel about X, Y, and Z? And then just, so, it's a good conversation. to
Okay,
have.
here's that Bible. Hey,
Love it.
based on what you were saying before about that we're going to be on display and representatives of Christ. Dennis, I sent you this a week ago or so, but just a refresher. Ezekiel 36:16. The word of the Lord came to me, son of man. When the house of Israel lived in their own land, they defiled it by their ways and their deeds. Their ways before me were like unclean. Dude, this is so small. It's one of these like teeny things. Were like the uncleanliness of a woman in her menstrual impurity. So I poured out my wrath upon them for the blood that they had shed in the land, for the idols with which they had defiled it. I scattered them amongst the nations, and they were dispersed throughout the countries in accordance with their ways and their deeds. I judged them. But when they came to the nations, wherever they came, they profaned my holy name. In that people said to them, these are the people of the Lord, and yet they had to go out of his land. But I had concern for my holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned amongst the nations to which they came. Therefore say to the house, okay, that's what we're doing. We're going, we're not being punished and dispersed to the nations, but we're carrying the name of God to the nations, and we have the opportunity to glorify his name or profane his name, right? We're going to do the same thing. And luckily, because we're not going out in judgment, we're not going to be profaning it, but along the way we might we might, do something naughty and profane his name. Just keep that in mind. God's concerned
Yeah.
about his holy name, right?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
have that responsibility. We're not the nation of Israel in that sense, but applicably,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
said
know.
it right.
I'm lost.
Yeah, you did good. You did good.
It's the same effect,
Yeah.
And this is that passage from that little clip we had about taking the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah.
That's what
I
this
thought
was.
about that
That's what
actually
this
this
was.
weekend. That's exactly what I thought about this weekend. I was like, you're right.
I wonder if
That's exactly
Ellie,
what it
did
is.
you see that clip we did when Dennis and I were talking, and we did a little section on taking the Lord's name in vain?
Yes, I did.
It's
I was
on-
actually,
it-
it was pretty
Ah,
good actually.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. I
Yeah,
liked it.
it's online.
No, and to go to what Benny said, Romans 2 says, similar languages, and it's the morality actually that causes this response. It says in Romans 2 verses, we'll just start in 21. Therefore, you who teach someone else, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who tell others not to commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, dishonor God by transgressing the law. For just as it is written, the name of God is being blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Right. So,
Mhm.
like, and notice it's the morality. It's like, hey, you're preaching about this, but you're doing this. And because of that, God's name is being blasphemed.
Mhm.
So there is this calling of us, like, hey, if we're gonna teach here, preach here, because that's what we're gonna do. Preaching and teaching is just another way of saying we're gonna communicate some truths to other people in hopes that they would understand it, comprehend it in the mind. Preaching is more of the heart aspect, right? So we're gonna be doing that, and we need to be mindful that our moral conduct is on display as well. And the name of the Lord can be profaned and blasphemed among the people because of our decisions we're going to make. So if it is something like, hey, all right, I'll take this serious call. I'm gonna be a preacher and a teacher on this podcast. That doesn't mean I'm a pastor. It just means everything I say is preaching and teaching. That's the idea. Then I need to know that I need to walk in a manner worthy of the calling. I need to really live a life of holiness as best as I could. That doesn't mean I'm not going to sin. It's just that's how I should be marked, as someone who
Right.
honors the Lord in lifestyle. So that's, to his point, that's how the Lord is blasphemed all day. Like, oh, look at that guy. Oh, he calls himself a Christian. Look at him. He's no different than me,
Yep.
right? We need to be
Mhm.
mindful of that, right? So,
Does
that,
that, but
go
isn't
ahead.
that though like living in the sin though? Is there a difference between like, um,
Yeah, the habitual lifestyle, right?
Yeah,
Again,
like,
that talk about
yeah.
as you're marked. It's how are you marked? Like,
Right.
so if
Right.
someone said like, hey, tell me if Ben, if people are like, hey, Ben, oh, he's blah 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 X Y, he's funny, he's shenanigans, he's not serious. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, but in his moral conduct, how would you mark his morality? How would you mark
Mhm.
him? Is he an adulterer?
Yeah,
Is he a
but
blasphemer?
you
Is
see,
he
but
a
like,
drunkard?
but let me tell you though, like, I don't know. I don't consider myself like, I don't know. I think for me, I think like,
Man,
I
I'm
have
gonna pull
a,
a Ray Comfort on you right now. I'm like, if someone commits one murder, what are they called? A murderer.
yeah,
But
no, you're
you
right.
rape one goat.
The one goat.
Have you heard that joke? Have
Wait,
you
what
heard
is that
joke?
from? Where's that from?
Oh
I
my
did hear
God. No,
that.
it's a joke. It's a joke. It's like
It's
a
so good.
oh my
Ah,
God. It is so good.
it's
It's not
amazing.
like a stand-up thing. It's like a joke. It's like two guys walk into a bar. It's one of
No,
those jokes.
and Dennis,
Yeah.
to your point, I can't say X amount of times or this.
Yeah, I know,
It's
because
just
that's where it gets weird. Yeah,
generally, right? And
right.
again,
But who gets to make that also? Because you see, here's what I
culture.
struggle with, right? Right, but like you have a lot of uninformed people too, like with my life, right? Like with my
Right.
past, right? Like I'm not saying I was perfect, but I'm also saying that I don't have a black child, a
Right.
child with a black lady. Like I just don't. And that was the word for a little while, So like, what, I didn't sit and fight for my reputation, 6 years ago. I didn't fight anyone. I had to worry about my daughter and my business that I had. That's all I cared about that time. You know, for me, it's just, I understand what you're saying. But it's weird when you have like this misconception, right, of people, right? And then you suffer because of that. It's fine. Listen, it's not like I was perfect, because if I was perfectly
Yes,
blameless,
you do
then,
suffer because of
you
that.
know, right? Well, yeah. If
That's
I
the
was
world we
blameless,
live in.
we wouldn't. This wouldn't have even be an issue, right? So like there was
Mm.
obviously, things that I did wrong. So, yeah, I guess maybe that's right. This just I
No,
just need to take it.
here's another one, right? In James, and this is James warns us about stuff that we're about to do, right? Not many of you should become teachers. That's kind of what we're doing
Mhm.
here. We're all teachers now.
I'm
My
not
brothers and
teaching anybody.
sisters, you are teaching. Because here it is, you know that we will be judged more strictly.
Right,
And
right.
the context is, for we all stumble in many ways. If some does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect individual, able to control the entire body as well. And if we put bits in the mouths of horses to get them to obey us, then we guide their entire bodies. Look at ships. The tongue is a small part of the body, yet it has many pretensions. In other words, it's like, listen, you want to be a teacher? Get ready for scrutiny. Get ready for all eyes to be on you. Everyone's going to
Mm.
judge you because you are stepping out in the forum of, listen to me. I have wisdom to proclaim.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we will listen to you, and then we're going to judge you on your what you say, on how you live, on how you act, and what you do. That's just
Right,
that's
right.
just a reality, and that's the warning, right? So is it
Yeah.
fair or not? It doesn't matter. That's the life we live in. That's the world we're part of. That's the humanity we walk through. That's the journey we're on, and we
So
need to be mindful of that.
here's something that we should probably consider then, like, because we're talking about teaching and not teaching. We're talking about, like, even as you were saying, we're teaching, we're stepping out and teaching. Even Ben was like shaking his head, kind of like, well, I'm not teaching anything. And you're like, yes, you are. What, like, let's talk about that as far as this Bible study part of the podcast, right? Like, are we teaching? Or are we discussing? Are we reading and
I'm
talking? Are
studying
we...
the Bible and the Bible study.
Okay. But okay. I mean, I feel like my role in this, if we continue, is like the lesser one, right? It's like, hey, I'm just asking some questions, moderating, clicking some stuff, hanging out with you guys, having some fun, and learning, really. Because you guys are teaching. So,
Hey, be
you
cool,
know,
bro.
I mean, are we doing that or not? Like, I mean, how are we going to approach this? Are we going to approach this from a standpoint of teaching? I know I
Well,
can't.
let me ask you a question. Is there a goal here that everyone or anyone who hears us would learn something? Is that the goal?
Yes.
Then that
Learn
I
involves
mean,
teaching.
well,
something.
learn something. Hang on a second.
Are you hoping that when people watch our podcast that they learn absolutely nothing and it's purely entertainment and zero growth in their knowledge, zero growth in scriptures, zero growth in their walk with the Lord, zero, like it's a zero sum game in terms of the spiritual
Right.
aspect of scriptures, God's holy word, who he is, and it's purely entertainment and no hope in their growth and development as a Christian whatsoever.
Yeah, I wouldn't say purely entertainment, but I would say that I want the Holy Spirit to teach, and not me, not you, not anyone else. I think that if
No,
we discuss
I
things,
I see what you're saying. I don't have the intent of putting together like a sermon every Monday and teaching people from
right,
the Bible. My intent is to uh, have discussions with people that I respect and want to hear their opinions and to discuss their opinions. And if somebody learns something new along the way, finds something interesting that we're discussing, my intention isn't to convince people or teach people about my opinions. You know what I mean? If that happens because something's brought to light that they didn't know while you and I are having a conversation, that's cool. Like there's
yeah,
I'm
but then I
not
guess
opposed to that.
we can say like, well, then if all we're concerned about is the sense of let's get together, let's we enjoy each other, we respect each other, and we can help each other, or not even help each other, just discuss to figure out opinions. What's the need of recording it and podcasting it? Like, what is the goal of displaying it? Do you want people just to be entertained by our discussions? Do you want people to be like, oh, look at
Because
these
I think
weirdos talking about chess and cubes and stuff, right? Like, what would be the goal? Like,
uh
you're going to put it out there for a purpose, right? That's the idea. Here's the
yeah.
purpose. It's on display. in hopes that they retain something or they get something out of it. That's the only reason why you would display anything.
Well, one, recording it is also for like myself personally. This is also borderline a diary, but not like a gay one, you know, like where you like your like brother finds your diary and makes fun of you.
Can you
know,
clip this
but
out
this
just
is
in case there's someone who keeps a diary and they're not gay?
oh, are we recording?
Yes,
we are recording, my friend.
By gay, I meant happy.
Happy.
We use our terms very literally here.
The Romanian word for gay is happy.
Poponar.
Yeah. So a
happy is
happy
gay.
diary. And so yeah, that's one of the reasons I want to do this, because I want to be able to, in the future, my kids to be like, oh, look, my dad when he was 36. I wonder what he was thinking. You know what I mean? And then pop it open and check it out and be like, thank God this isn't a gay diary. But then the question is, why post it publicly, right? Because we could do that. I could just record my screen while we talk and keep it to myself privately. The other reason for this was because I have these conversations with a lot of people. And what I've found recently is it's a lot of the same conversations over and over again, because unbeknownst to me, for some reason, a lot of people are going through the same stuff that are in my life. So I'm just having the same conversation over and over and over again. So I'm like, dude, I'm tired. Like, this is taking up so much time. Why don't I just record these conversations with friends and get into these topics? And I could refer people to go watch this video or that video or this video. You know what I mean? And then it's not just me talking. I have other people that are versed on the matter or on the scripture, and they could speak to the topic as well. So I guess there's teaching involved. I mean, because I'm not, how am I going to do this? I guess it's splitting hairs, because I'm personally not of the opinion that I want to teach anybody anything. I want to have discussions with people who are also educated and know the scripture and who can shed light on these topics. And if people benefit from them, great. If people don't, and just use them as fodder to talk crap, cool. I don't care. That's on you. That's not on me. Does that deter from the fact that I think we need to be above reproach and live holy lives and stuff like that? No, not at all. Because that, whether I'm recording this or not, that doesn't change, right?
Right.
So that should be a constant for us, whether we hit record or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And that's the challenge, right? Because it's like, is this a teaching podcast? Is this just a discussion podcast? And my impression is that whether it's like, I want to say, well, I'm a teacher and I'm teaching you is irrelevant. It's what is it doing? What is the podcast going to do regardless? And it will serve itself as an educational podcast, right? Because we're going to be talking about things people are probably never been exposed to, which means they are now learning from us. They're gonna be like, I never knew Ezekiel 4 said that. And now they heard our opinions, and it's a form of a lesson. They learned it. Oh, cool. Now, maybe it sparks onto good works, maybe bad works, right? But in the end, they learned it from us. And so it's always going to be a teaching platform, regardless whether we want to teach or not. Anytime you speak, there's listeners, and anytime there's listeners, there's learning. Anytime there's learning, that's a teaching opportunity, right? It's just it's out of nowhere. So no, to your point, I understand what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. It's just, this is new to me in the sense of a podcast, right? So this is new, and like, to what extent is this podcast considered a teaching platform? And I take it as like, well, whatever I say here, say it as if you were in front of the audience of God, and this is what you're delivering, and let him do what he wants with it. Because if he's going to take it to the world, he's going to take it to the world. So we need to be mindful of what we're saying, because it's going to be delivered. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it. And then in terms of associations, like, Dennis, right? He's associated, he's going to have a bad reputation, quote unquote, whether he does or not. That's, let's just assume he does. Okay. But bad association based off what? Hearsay, gossip. Okay. Like, we can't control that. Unless he chooses to actively continue a lifestyle that is unholy, then yeah, that's our fault for associating in that regard.
Yeah, we kind of talked. I think we know where Dennis stands, and I think we know where he's at in this process, right? And we agree that it's a process and that it's not overnight, which is something my brother would disagree with me on.
Really?
But
I'm
I-
interested in talking about
I
it.
poke fun, but yeah, it would be interesting to talk to him about that. But
Have him on the podcast one day.
I'm sure it'll just be us fighting the whole time. But hey, because I'm in a group
I'd
chat
like to
with
watch
Sebi.
that.
I'm in a group chat with Sebi.
But what do
and
you what do you mean overnight? Like what
I'm
happens
just being
overnight?
I'm being hyperbolic, like
I got
sanctification. Because okay, basically, just to go off on a little tangent. So basically, Sebi and I and Dan are in a group chat, and he sent clips of like Kanye saying how he likes Nazis and Hitler and stuff, you know. And he's like, dude, there's no way this guy's saved, and I don't think this other guy's saved or this other guy's saved. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that. Maybe he's just saying stupid stuff, you know, and maybe he's just growing in sanctification like we were, because the guy's been Christian for like 4 years or something, you know, and it's all new for him. And he's like, dude, there's no way you could say this kind of stuff and be Christian. And I'm just like, I mean, I don't know about that, bro. Like, even in Corinthians, they're sleeping with their stepmoms and they're getting drunk at communion and they're ostracizing the poor and blah, blah, blah. And he still refers to them as brothers, still says to discipline them as brothers, still says to set them outside so they come back into communion. And it's like, I don't know. Paul didn't say, hey, these guys are non-Christian because they're doing naughty things, you know. Most of the churches he writes to are doing naughty things. So I think that there's
Six
there's
of
room.
the 7 churches in Revelation are doing naughty things.
Boom. Thank you. Great. So I think there's
church
room.
is good.
Yeah.
Literal church is good.
Literal churches?
7
I agree
little
they are
churches.
literal. I agree they are literal
Okay.
churches.
Revelation
Dude,
was fulfilled.
look at this
Let's move-
glare.
Yeah,
Look
no,
at
that's
that
pretty
glare.
crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
That looks like
looks
eyes.
amazing.
Dude, that's
You
dumb.
actually you look like what's name? Weekend at Bernie's. Weekend at Bernie's.
That's funny. I got to figure something out.
Are we
with
ever
that.
going to start this Revelation 1?
No, never. Because we're not in Revelation.
We're going to Ephesians, boys.
Revelation.
So Ellie, on last thing. So we know the trajectory that Dennis is on and the path he's on. Things might come up in the future, whether it's in the chat, whether it's somebody else puts a video out. We don't know. We don't know. We can't control those things, right? Somebody could say shit about me, about you. It doesn't matter, right? You used to argue with everybody and be stubborn and proud and blah blah blah. People might say that I'm a joke and I don't know what I do. Sleep with goats. I don't know what they're
long
say.
hair.
Long hair. It's a
Pacatoso.
blasphemy, you know.
Yeah.
Steven Seagal style.
Yeah. That's you dying. That's the sound of death. So we don't know. We can't control what people are going to do, what Satan's going to do. We can't control that. And I've got a clear conscience before the Lord, right? But what I did tell Dennis when we were talking the other day, after we got off, what I did tell him was, hey, the only way that this is going to be okay going forward is when those moments come up, you have to be willing to be like brutally open and honest about the situation that arose, right? What they're saying, whether it's true or not, what happened, what Jesus did through it, where you're at now, and praise God for his grace, because this chick is right. I was a piece of shit, right? And now I'm not, by the grace of God. And I'm still growing and sanctifying and blah, blah, blah. So as those situations come up, we need to address whatever the topics are. And in so doing, we point back to the grace of Christ. We point back to the narrative that and the story that he's telling through us in each of our lives. And that's all we got. That's the best we could do, right? Otherwise, we just need to hide in caves and stop being teachers and preachers because we all have a past, right? So that's where I'm at on that issue. I'm expecting it. We're not ignorant of what can be. We just need to be on the same page about how transparent we're going to be when it does happen,
Yeah. No, and I'm willing to do that. It'll be very difficult.
That's great.
But I'm willing to do that. And I think that God will be glorified in that so much more. Because that's the whole point, right?
That's the point,
I'm
bro.
only here talking because I have been.
You're not gonna pull a Kanye and start talking about Nazis and all that stuff.
If you see me with a mask on or like my face covered, then Yeah, I might throw one of those out there, but that was weird. I almost think
I
that
like
was
Hitler.
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That it almost seems
Crop
to
that
me
out. Crop that out.
that was
Crap,
all
crap
crap it
that
out, crap it out, crap it. I think that was all like I don't know,
Staged. I think it's
staged, man.
staged. I
Yeah.
think
That
So
he's
was
what?
gonna
So
not.
what are we doing?
something's going on.
Are we not going to move forward with Revelation? Are we switching
No.
straight to Ephesians?
No, we're gonna hop right into Revelations.
Revelations, multiple
I'm
revelations.
I'll make a new screen that says Ephesians for you, buddy.
Yeah, do
that.
something. Do something with his where it won't interfere with his hair.
Yeah.
You know.
But I know he didn't dive into it because most people are not going to want to dive into Revelation if they have the mindset like, who can really understand Revelation? You know, so most people aren't going to dive into it, right? To really hammer out Revelation because that's the mindset. It's not easy to understand. And who can really understand it? So I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be a lot of confusion. And I don't want to, we're not going to agree on certain things, but I still want to be able to draw the attention to like the clarity of certain areas. Like, we shouldn't be confused on certain things, but we are going to be confused on a lot of things, right? But as long as we know the mind frame, where we're coming from, and I don't mind. That's what I like. Like, hey, you're an amillennial. No, I'm not. Well, you're not consistent, so let's get consistent, right? It's kind of like, because I know people are going to listen. You know, like you're saying, like, hey, I believe in the rapture, but I also believe we're in the millennium kingdom. No, those don't work, which means there's an inconsistency in how you're approaching scriptures because that's an impossibility. So you can't take those two you like and say, I like these two. No.
Why? Why though?
Because
why does it have to be all or nothing?
Well, it's not that it has to be all or nothing. You're just you can't splice it, right? You can't say like, I believe in a tribulation period and there's going to be a pre-trib rapture. Okay, but you believe that we're in the millennium kingdom. Yes. How's that going to work? Because the pre-trib rapture happens before millennium kingdom. You can't say I believe in a pre-trib rapture.
Pre-trib rapture happens
before the millennium kingdom.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can't say I'm in the millennium kingdom now, but I also believe in a future pre-trib rapture. That's impossible. You're being inconsistent.
Wouldn't you be able to say that you come back after the millennial reign?
Yeah, but so now you're doing like extreme gymnastics. Now the passages you're going to use to refer to the pre-trib rapture is and the millennium, and the passages you're using for the millennium kingdom, the interpretations aren't going to be correct anymore. You're going to say it means this in this passage. Oh, so then it means this in this passage. No, well, no, because I have to hold to a rapture, so it can't mean that in that passage. So consistent on the passages, and that's where it gets complex. So if you say like, hey, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is a rapture talk. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. So then make sure then that in Revelation chapter 2, verse 6, 7, and 8, that's not a rapture talk because that's an impossibility to have those two verses connected to the same event. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's, you can't do that.
Yeah, we would have to have all the scriptures opened up. We'd have to do the same thing we've been doing for the past 3 freaking weeks, and I've gotten nowhere.
Yes, no, that's not true. Because no, so the reality is this, and this is why if we get, I don't mind in Revelation for this reason, because Revelation, you'd have to spend several weeks leading to Revelation 1,
right?
Because you got to set stages, right? You got to set the fall. You got to set Genesis in its proper context. You got to put the covenants in its proper context, because then you got to put the exile in its proper context.
But
then
why can't you just read Revelation linearly and be like, okay, well, it's saying this, and this are going to happen. And then it's saying after those things happen, this, and this are going to happen. And then finally, there's a cube that comes. Why can't you just follow it like linearly? And sure, then you could go to, then there's other passages, right? Thessalonians, Matthew, all over the place, where there's these little like tidbits, but don't those all point to this book?
And that's the thing. If you're going to say Matthew 24, Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 9, for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, all point to the book of Revelation, right? Then you have three options really, because I'm going to throw your option in here. The first option is that it was fulfilled, because those all point to the destruction of Jerusalem and the desolation, which happened in AD, right?
AD 70.
So you're like, cool. The second option is like, all those passages, every single one of them is futuristic. None of them refer to the 80-70 motif. That's the second
Okay.
option. And the reason why you have that second option is because you're trying to be consistent with Ezekiel's interpretation, because it's all there in John. You got Zechariah chapter 4, you got Zechariah 12, Jeremiah's prophecies, you got John's, you got Isaiah's, you got
And you're saying it's all there because John is obviously using the same language as these other passages, right? And is that true?
Did you guys
Can
hear
you still
that?
hear me?
Yeah. Good. Sorry, something went weird with me. You got it.
No, I didn't hear anything.
Okay, cool. This
No,
is something
that
about
was fine.
Isaiah's Zeiger.
Might have been
Siri
on
went
your
nuts
end.
and yeah. So what you're gonna
Mine
ask?
was
What?
fine.
So I was saying, you're saying that all of these Old Testament passages are there in Revelation because John's using the same language and the same metaphors and that kind of stuff. And that's
Well,
why you're saying those passages relate to Revelation, right?
right, because the illusion is then it is illusions because that's what he's doing, right? He's alluding to a lot of Old Testament passages. And in those passages in their context is about a abomination of Jerusalem, their destruction, this and that, this and that. So you're seeing a lot of that. So you're saying like, okay, what is John doing? Is he merely just giving an imagery like that? Or is he going back and saying like, guys, everything I'm seeing right now, I'm telling you is the fulfillment of those prophecies, because they're all prophecies. They're not just pictures like, oh, and then I saw the heavens. The point that he got exalted to the heavens was because there was a vision and a prophecy given regarding the judgment of God on his people. So it wasn't just purely for to see the image of the heaven and the thrones and this. And
Right.
it was for a message that was being delivered ultimately. That's the whole point of the prophecies, is there's a message that's coming. John is doing the same thing.
Where's the inconsistency in my view that it can be referring to AD 70 and a future event?
So the inconsistency is not that you believe in a dual fulfillment, right? Because when you say, if anything you say is dual fulfillment, the only thing that can't really be a dual fulfillment is like the first advent, right? Because Christ already came and he died on the cross. You can't say like, oh, he's going to do that twice. You're not going to, that's an impossibility, right? But to say like, oh, this prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem, people fleeing to Judea, all this stuff can happen again. It's like, that's a stretch. I can't say absolutely not, because God can do whatever he wants.
So you're
but
putting
that's
it
a
on
stretch.
par. You're putting that perspective on par with, well, God could do anything he wants.
That's it. It's like, it's just like, oh, because he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to duplicate that story again, cool. Have at it. In the future, he'll duplicate it. You see what I'm saying? Because it's a mystery. And any dual fulfillment is considered a mystery that has to be revealed. For example, a prophecy of and the virgin will give birth to and he will call his name Emmanuel, right? That's Isaiah, I believe, chapter 7 or 8. And yeah, that's exactly what happened immediately. A virgin gave birth to falling to, I forgot the guy's name, Belshazzar, whatever his name is, in Isaiah. It was fulfilled immediately, but it was a dual fulfillment in the sense that it was ultimately fulfilled in the Messiah, the Christ, that was used for him.
Wait, there was another dude born of a virgin, and his name was Emmanuel?
Yeah, Isaiah. This is what you call a dual fulfillment. The idea was that it was immediately fulfilled in their context.
In the Bible?
Wait, did you just say that Isaiah was born of a virgin?
No,
it's
like,
in Isaiah. He's saying it's in Isaiah.
No, so let me pull it up for you.
I was like, wait a second, dude.
I got it. I believe it's.
This is another one of our, we're in the Millennium Kingdom moments where we're both like, wait, what? Or what? Dennis, what did he say? Oh, that they were already raptured and everything, right?
So, yeah.
What was it?
I know. I was like, wait, what?
Hold on.
You believe that?
And then he shows us, and we're like, I mean, maybe not.
So right here, Isaiah chapter 7. If you want to pull up Isaiah chapter 7 in your own books, but I'll just read it to you. This is the quote from the New Testament.
Hold on,
Isaiah
hold on,
chapter 7. I got to read this
Is-
too, buddy.
Yeah, bring it up. Bring it up in this
All right.
Isaiah
last
7,
Isaiah chapter
Let
7.
me-
just in the
Bible
beginning.
version.
No.
I will admit, I do have a lot of reading to do. So much reading, so little time.
Isaiah 7, what?
Let's go on verse 14.
Hang on, I'm going to try to find the NET really quick because I've been using the NET
good
more.
call. It's so good.
It's definitely better in my opinion. Gotta open
Yeah,
it.
NET is my favorite translation. I mean,
When did that come out?
it's 2017.
Whoa,
And
that recent?
there's gonna be better translations in the
figured it was.
future as we're finding new new texts, new manuscripts as we're uncovering. It's gonna bring more light to what these words actually meant. Like, oh, that's the direction they took it. We're gonna have better translations in the future by God's grace. You know, as we get closer and closer to the Lord's coming, I think He's gonna make it more readily accessible to be like, all right, cool, understand this text even better now.
All right, I almost got it. You said Isaiah 7, right? I'm going to share
Yeah,
my
Isaiah
screen.
7. We can start in,
Oh
just to
my
get its
God.
context.
Hey, real quick. Dennis,
Yeah.
how brilliant would this invention be? A microphone that on the back, so you can't see it. There's a little like vape nipple, so you could literally just bend down.
Oh boy.
The things that it picks
Bro,
up. The
that's
thing that-
genius.
I don't know. Listen, Ben has had some really good inventions in
Bro,
his lifetime, so I can't
I
argue
have
with
a
his invention.
list. I have a list on my
You've
phone
had some
going
solid
back.
inventions,
Going
brother.
back like 8 to 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Where I can open this list up and there's dates, and almost all of those things now exist and are
I believe you 100%
stupid
because of
billion-dollar ideas,
the
bro.
Amazon cart thing where you said you just put
I
things in
sent
your
you that?
cart. You told me that when I lived in California, and you said, "Man, this would be such a great idea, like just to have a cart and just put things in there, and then
Holy
it'll total it
crap.
up."
That was
And
like 7 years ago, man.
That was you. I remember
I
that.
did
Ever
I did a
since
whole
that,
I did a whole I did a whole business plan and write up and everything on that. But
I think I remember that or something. You were like really
I
like,
didn't do anything.
yeah.
Listen,
yeah,
bro,
that was
ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is $1 billion.
There we go.
Okay, sorry.
All right, what
No,
do we
you're
got?
good.
Is this
So you
it?
go,
7?
yeah, so you go to verse 10, and here's just the context,
Verse
right?
10?
The Lord
You see on
again
the
spoke
screen?
the Lord spoke to Ahaz, ask for a confirming sign from the Lord your God. You can even ask for something miraculous. But Ahaz responded, I don't want to ask. I don't want to put the Lord to a test. So Isaiah replied, pay attention, family of David. Do you consider it too insignificant to try the patience of men? Is that why you are also trying the patience of my God? For this reason, the Lord himself will give you a confirming sign. Look, this young woman is about to conceive and will give birth to a son. You, young woman, will name him Emmanuel. That's the prophecy right there, right? Before this child knows how to do good and evil in the land, this and that, da, da, da. At that time, the Lord will whistle, da, da, da. Okay, cool. So when you see all that, he says, hey, I'm going to give you a sign. And this young woman, because that's what a virgin means, this young woman will give birth to a son, and he will call his name Emmanuel, and that's the sign. In the very next chapter was fulfilled from Mahar Shalal Hashbaz. Like that's
How
the
do you
name.
know that the chick was a virgin?
The version. She's young.
No,
Let me
and that's
see.
it's the same word in the Greek, and that's why it's quoted in the New Testament that this was actually an ultimate prophecy being fulfilled in the Messiah, right? So the idea
So this chick that gave birth was not a virgin or was a virgin?
was a young woman. Again, at the language would be a virgin in the sense of young woman. That's the word. Now, the way it's used in the New Testament, it's using that word referring back to Christ being born of a virgin, even more so as opposed to this prophecy. Again, but the whole point
But this chick was was already pregnant, right? He's like, hey, this chick's about to give birth. You're gonna name it Emmanuel.
Yeah. So, and that's the idea. So
she was already pregnant.
So the idea was this would be a direct fulfillment immediately, and it was the son that she gave birth to, but it was a dual fulfillment, a different type of fulfillment that was only brought out when the Messiah came. So the immediate fulfillment of this prophecy, right? This was the immediate fulfillment of this prophecy that this woman will give birth and call his name Emmanuel. He'll be here. He'll do this. He'll do this. It was immediately fulfilled. Yet the mystery was that it was ultimately pointing to the Christ. But no one knew that until the Christ came and it was made clear that it was ultimately referring to him. That's the idea of mysteries and dual fulfillments.
Okay.
You don't know it's a dual fulfillment because it's a mystery, right? So if you're saying, well, Matthew 24, could it be a dual fulfillment? Yeah, but that's a mystery.
Dennis, just real quick, when we start talking, you could pull the screen share off.
Oh yeah. Are you guys done with the text for that?
Yeah.
That's just an example. So the idea is
Sure.
like that's all dual fulfillments mean. It's like it was immediately fulfilled and then mysteriously revealed again. But that's because the New Testament authors said, "Oh, remember that prophecy that was fulfilled then? It was ultimately a shadow of this bigger fulfillment."
Yeah, but you
Okay.
see that quite often. You see like a foreshadowing that is utterly fulfilled like later on. You see that a lot actually.
But it's
And a
typically
lot of it was
referencing the Christ,
messianic. Yeah, you're right. A lot
right?
of it was messianic. Dennis,
So
what were
I
you gonna say?
don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, but so in that when he was talking to Ahaz,
Yeah.
did that really, that was an immediate fulfillment? But are you saying that that woman was a virgin, or are you just saying she was a young pregnant woman and he just used her as an example?
He's saying it was the same word used of
Is
the
the
virgin
word
in
a
the New
young
Testament.
woman? Yeah, exactly. It's the same word in the New Testament could refer to young woman / virgin, depending on how you take it in context. And although we most likely agree that that person in the Old Testament wasn't a virgin who gave birth,
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay.
Back up to the word and context and what you just said, because that, if you got to take it in context in both ways, whether in Isaiah or in Matthew and Luke and all these, where they say virgin clearly, right? I'm
Mhm.
assuming, and then we have young woman here, but you're saying it's the same word.
Yeah. So again, when in the context, when you say like a young woman, it typically means virgin who's not yet, has yet to know someone intimately,
Then why
right?
don't they apply that to the scriptures in Matthew and Luke?
Well, they do, and that's the idea. This young woman here in Isaiah knew someone eventually, and that's how they got pregnant and had a kid. You see what I'm saying?
So she
But
wasn't pregnant when this prophecy was given to her?
no, I think that was the sign that hey, this young woman is gonna be pregnant, and gonna have a
Ah.
kid. Whether it's not gonna be virgin like we're thinking virgin. The idea is the young woman. But again, when the New Testament authors pick up on this idea, it's like, hey, what happened then? That prophecy about that young woman was gonna have a son, and it's gonna be Emmanuel, which means God with us, and these are the signs.
Mhm.
That's a greater picture. It's pointing to a greater picture of this woman is a virgin, but she's not going to be known by anyone. And the son will come out of her, not because she knew someone, but because God did a
Yeah.
supernatural work. It was a mysterious prophecy that you didn't understand it in its immediate context, only to be revealed by the Messiah later on.
I mean, I see it again. I see it a foreshadowing. I don't see them actually in the same vein at all, because in verse 24 it says, look, this young woman is about to conceive. About to conceive is not 9 months later. She didn't just get pregnant right here when Isaiah said these words. She's about to conceive and will give birth to a son. You, young woman, will name him Emmanuel. He will eat sour milk, right? So this chick was, in my opinion, it looked like she was already pregnant and was about to give birth. And the foreshadowing of the Messiah was simply that he told her to name him Emmanuel. That's it. Why are you
Who
Get
laughing?
was
this.
this child? Who was this child
Why are you
that
laughing?
came out of this
Well,
woman?
let me just answer Ben really quick because I think it's hilarious. So let me get this straight. Because of the word is about, you automatically place it in as therefore they must have been pregnant because it doesn't give a time period like afterwards. Yet in Revelation, when it says soon, you give it a 2,000-year gap and say you're okay with that interpretation.
No. Dual fulfillment. Well,
Anyways,
okay.
He kind of got you there. He
No,
kind of got you
not
there.
at all, because one is a prophetic book, right?
both of
Uh
them are
Isaiah
Uh,
is
prophetic.
also historic, though. Isaiah is
Well,
describing a
this is a
historic
prophecy.
event.
So this is talking about something that's going to happen in the future. So this was a prophetic message.
It's fulfilled in the future prophetically, but this is also a historic event. This chick gave birth and named it Emmanuel. That's not a prophecy. It is also fulfilled as
No. You're not reading it correctly. This is the sign he's going to give them. So if you read it again, it says, pay attention, verse 13. Do you consider it too insignificant to try the patience of men? Is that why you are also trying the patience of God? For this reason, the sovereign master himself will give you a confirming sign. This is what it is. Look, this young woman is about to conceive and will give birth to a son. That's the sign. This woman right now, this young one is virgin.
Oh, I
She's
think the
gonna end up
sign is. I think the sign is that he knew
she's going to
what
get pregnant.
No. I think the sign is that he knew what the gender was because they didn't have ultrasounds back then. So when the chick popped out a baby within an hour, or who knows how soon she
Right.
is to give birth, right? Because she's about to give birth. And it was a son. She was like, oh my God, I need to name it Emmanuel. He knew it was a son. I think the sign there is that he knew that it was going to be a boy, not that she miraculously gets pregnant.
Yeah, I'm not saying she miraculously got pregnant. I'm saying like, hey, this young woman right here, the sign is that she will conceive. She will eventually give birth.
Do you see my perspective on this?
I get you, but in the end, it's still a
because
prophecy.
we're reading the same words, and we're coming to two completely different understandings.
Right, because
of
it depends.
words.
I'm not sure why, unless we're trying to kind of like fit a narrative here. And my point is,
no, not at all. I don't have
point,
a narrative. I don't have a narrative.
My only point is that it's a prophecy. This is a prophecy. That's all it is, right? And it's gonna happen, whatever it's in the near future, in a week or 2 weeks. God is saying, I'm giving you a sign, and here's my prophecy. This is the prophecy. It's a sign that's going to happen, and then it was fulfilled again in the Christ in the future. That's all.
It was actually like utterly fulfilled because an actual virgin gave birth, right?
Right. So that's the idea of dual fulfillment.
Whereas here, this chick's sounds like she's already pregnant and she's about to pop.
Yeah, whether she was pregnant or not is the point. Is that was a prophecy that immediately happened, and all I'm saying is the dual fulfillment aspect is a mystery that can only be understood or revealed when it happens again.
Totally.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the point is, you don't know at the same time fulfillment at the time. You don't know
at the same time. You're right. You're totally right. I agree with you on that. That's why even when one of our first weeks, I was even saying most prophecies you don't know until they're fulfilled. Like that's just the way these things work, right? But at the same time, with dual fulfillments that are messianic, maybe even with Revelation, again, this is what happened here, which in my opinion was Isaiah knew that it was going to be a boy. That's the prophecy, or that's the testing of God and how he proved that God's faithful or whatnot. That's a minuscule foreshadowing or fulfillment of the big picture of what the Messiah did. He was born of a virgin. He did fulfill all these other things that were told about him, right? Which is the big fulfillment of the prophecy. Him knowing the gender here was still a fulfillment of this, but just on a minute level compared to what utterly happened, right? And that's kind of how I see a dual fulfillment in Revelation. Jerusalem was destroyed. It was bad. It was bloody. They got kicked out of their land, blah, blah, blah. But that's going to happen on a much bigger, grander scale at the end of days. And the only reason I jumped to that conclusion, the only reason I say, because you said it a couple of weeks ago, you're like, oh, well, then you know a mystery that nobody else does. And sure, God could do anything he wants, right? I'm not trying to like find a mystery that's been revealed only to me. What the reason I say that it might be dual fulfillment is because there's a lot of stuff in Revelation that's not fulfilled in AD 70. So I'm like, oh, well, if it wasn't fulfilled in AD 70, then maybe it's still to be fulfilled. So, because again, half of it looks like it was fulfilled in AD 70. Then the other half, I don't think so.
Right. And it would just be the hard work of you saying, I know for a fact this wasn't fulfilled because, and then you have to give that reasoning.
There's no cube of cheese, Ellie.
We got cheese. We got cubes today, man. We got grocery stores full of them. So
There's
and
no
I
cube.
guarantee you, if
There's
we put
no
them all together, it's
peace.
1,500 miles.
There's still death. There's still there's so much. The two freaking witnesses. There's just so much. Oh, dude. Oh, forget this. Hey, let's just read it, and I'm gonna ask you questions.
Yeah, why don't we just go? You know what? That's a good question. Why not? Let's just
I don't
dive
want to start
into
in the
those question
beginning.
marks.
I don't want to
What
do
are-
any of that.
What are the things that you're saying? Like, because people say all the time, and I was actually talking to someone. Just side note, who still believes that Matthew 24 has parts of it that's futuristic, and the question is why? Is it because there's still some Old Testament prophecies that were yet to be fulfilled? And my response has always been, what exactly? Well, I don't know.
Sure.
I said, okay, cool. So when you know what that is, please let me know so we can have a deeper discussion, so we can talk about it. Let's really, what is it that's saying now? It could be something like, 666. Well, yeah, that's Caesar. No, I don't like that answer. It doesn't matter. I explained to you I was fulfilled. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
You might not like the
okay.
because you're not gonna like my interpretation. You'll be like, well, I don't think that's what it means. Well, that's fine, because if the meaning of the text is what it is, whether or not we accept the meaning doesn't dictate whether or not that's what the meaning is. Our ability or inability to comprehend the meaning of the text doesn't dictate what it really is, right? So that's kind of how we want to be mindful of it too. But we got to be convinced of it too, right? We got to be.
This is also why a grander fulfillment also makes sense to me, because you're right. Okay, we know that the Nero thing adds up to 666, right? That's just the fact. However, there wasn't a mark on their hand or their forehead that they had to take. There wasn't the ability to cut people out of commerce and not be able to buy or sell without taking Nero's mark. There's stuff about that doesn't seem like it was fulfilled historically, unless I'm missing some historical events that happened. And that would be a question for you. Did those things actually happen? Was there actually a mark on their forehead or their hand? Were they cut out of commerce entirely?
Right. And this is where I would kind of answer it in, depends on the text we go to, like specifically this one. Was there a mark on their foreheads or their hands? I don't even think that's a little mark anyways. It's not gonna be like literally 666 here or literally 666, because it tells you what's going to be on their foreheads or their hands. 666. Now you can say, is it literally 666? The number, is that what you're saying? Or is it like pledging allegiance to your mind and your actions are devoted to the system of what's going on currently in that realm, which is Nero's reign.
I never heard that
Rome's
before.
Mind
really?
Actions.
Yeah. Well, that's
so
that would be.
I actually believe that.
Yeah. So I think you're going to pledge allegiance. I think what he's saying is either you pledge allegiance to the system or you cannot participate in. And I'll tell you what, during that season, if you were a Jew who did not pledge allegiance, you were cut off. And
what if we already pledged allegiance? What if we already pledged allegiance? Like, what if the industrial revolution, or maybe even this the internet boom is what is.
Nah, it's got to be conscious. You have to make a conscious decision to not choose Christ,
right,
and to choose the beast.
But what if the fact that we can't see, Ben, I've been saying this for like a year now, like this deception runs deep, deception runs deep, right? Like what if like we are living in that age, because we cannot buy or sell without like being in the system. I like what Ellie said earlier, mind, or what did you say, mind and actions in the system?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that
mind is devoted, committed, and the actions, the hands does out and does what the system.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way the world was when it was first created is nothing like what it looks now, as far as what people do, how people act, how people live, how people communicate, live together. Society, culture is very, very different. I don't know. I think what if this is already something that's happened, and we're already a part of it.
Well, then welcome to dual fulfillment. Because
maybe
it happened under Nero, and it's happening again on a grander global scale, right? Sure, it might have happened to Jerusalem. That's not what it says there. It says that no one will be able to buy or sell. It's
Yeah,
referring to
under the rule of the beast, right? And we know at that
Mm,
time the Roman rule is what ran the lands. It's the system that you need to be a part of. Jerusalem was part of the Roman system. Anyone who rebelled against that system was cut off. That's how it was, which is why the Jewish revolt
yeah,
happened in 66.
but you could still have a piece of silver and go give it to somebody and eat an apple.
I don't I don't
You weren't cut out of commerce. You were actually able to buy and sell, whether you abided by Nero or the Roman system or not, you know. Otherwise you have to assume that he's just kind of being sarcastic or hyperbolic.
no,
And
I think it got to a point where it got to a stage in their history where because they revolted to such an extent that they were cut off from that system, they would not bow down to the Roman system. They were cut off and ostracized, and they were not allowed at that point.
so
I
even
mean,
within their own city, they weren't able to transact or
well,
do anything.
when you look at that 66 to 73, it wasn't that type of world anymore as you're thinking like, hey, they were free to walk around and do their thing. And it was pretty much like they were done. They were surrounded, they were camped out, and there was hiding, there was running away, and
Right.
it's like they had like what we had today, where it's like they had Amazon down the street or Stater Brothers. No, a lot of their food came from their own crops. That's kind of how they survived,
Right.
right? So it's not like they were like us, but the ability to buy and sell, that was most likely, from what I remember reading at one point, that was gone. They didn't have the ability to do that anymore. That doesn't mean they didn't have the ability to eat because they were growing their own stuff.
Right.
But it was more like they didn't have the ability to move around because they were so against the Roman rule that Rome was after them specifically. And
And
they
so
were,
that would only apply to Jerusalem, right? The passages of buying and selling would only apply to the Jews.
well, I think anyone who did not bow down to that system, because what we know about the Jewish war, it wasn't just a Rome versus Jew thing. It actually involved nations around them too. So I am going to take that as the known, whereas they say the habitant world, right? The world at that time that was under the Roman rule, because the prophecies of the Old Testament, even Daniel chapter 7 and 2, is referring to the fourth beast. And the fourth beast was a fourth kingdom that we know refers to Rome. We know that. we're all in agreement with that. The first three kingdoms already came. The fourth kingdom, the fourth beast, rose up, and we knew that was Greco-Roman ruled under Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus. So that was the fourth prophecy of Daniel saying, hey, the fourth kingdom is going to come. And in Revelation, that's the beast that we're dealing with, is the fourth kingdom, right? And Daniel's prophecy is about how this fourth beast will eventually fail and lose ultimately when the Messiah comes and does his thing. And now you're seeing Revelation just almost continuing Daniel's like, okay, now since time's at hand, let's go ahead and expose Daniel even more. Let's give more details to this ending. And because it was a spiritual fulfillment, and again, I know this is where it's like, well, isn't that convenient? Yeah, it actually is convenient for me, right? Because that's the beauty of spiritualizing things. Is if I'm taking that the whole point of the scriptures of the Old Testament, starting from Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where the seed will crush the serpent's head, and the whole Old Testament is a shadow and a type of the messianic kingdom where Christ is going to come and restore humanity and bring the kingdom here. And we are his kingdoms, we are his kings and priests on earth. If I hold to that view, then I do believe that Zion is a spiritual concept. The new heaven and new Jerusalem is a spiritual concept that will be literally fulfilled when he fully consummates this world, where he fully comes and takes the throne on earth, officially revealing himself as the Messiah of 2,000 years ago, and then he's going to consummate that world. So if I believe he establishes his kingdom and he's on the throne, and now he's moving the world in a direction to finally receive and fully consummate his kingship on this planet, then yeah, Revelation is going to be spiritualized for sure. Because the Jews were looking for a little kingdom. The Israelites were looking for a little kingdom. They try to take him and make him a king by force. And he's like, my kingdom is not of this world. That's not, you guys are totally missing it. That's why Hebrews, like when you do a study on Hebrews, the author, it depends on who you listen to. It was a sermon that was preached, that was written down. Doesn't matter. But the author is preaching to the Jewish nation, right? And the whole point was, therefore, do not look for the earthly kingdom anymore. We have arrived to Mount Zion. Mount Zion is an Old Testament Zechariah prophecy of chapter 4, chapter 12, right? And Zion, he will step on Zion. He will come to Zion, the mountain of God. And, da-da-da. And then Hebrew says, we have arrived to Mount Zion, the kingdom of God. We are looking for a kingdom that cannot be shaken, whose foundations are God, not an earthly kingdom. You get all that in Hebrews, and it's specifically to the Jewish people. Like, stop looking for an earthly kingdom. We're done with that. We have Zion. We have received a new Jerusalem. It's a better kingdom than you ever thought. And at the end of the days, when he comes back, it'll be fully revealed on what that looks like. Can it be a cube? Sure. Right. That's fine. I'm not going to say like, heck no. I'm just like, that's fine if that part's literal, but I don't want to miss the whole point of what Jesus is doing in Revelation. Right. Like, I get it. That's fine. If that's all future, chapter 21, 22, it'll be a literal cube coming down. He calls it the New Jerusalem. That's fine. But in Hebrews, he spiritualizes the New Jerusalem. So the New Jerusalem is not a physical place. Now, is it going to be a physical residence? Yeah, I think it's like saying we're the new humanity. Well, does that mean you were translated to a new superhuman? No, but we are the new humanity. And then we will be immortalized when Christ returns. And what we are to be, we have yet to see it because our eyes can't behold this new realm. So we have the New Jerusalem already started in Christ. What it will become, we have no idea until he fully comes to like, and this is what it is. All right. So then, yeah, it's easy for me to be like, yeah, the Revelation is spiritualized for sure in so many ways, like the beast, the this, the that, the this, because that's all Old Testament language. And I got to remind myself, John is writing to Jews. So the Jewish mindset is in their background. That's kind of like me and you talking more Romanian stuff, right? And I'm going to allude to a lot of Romanian things that's going to trigger you to start thinking about the Romanian, like, oh, like Ceausescu. You're like, oh, yeah, that communist. Then it's going to be like, communism? How the heck did communism come up here? Right? Because he's unknown to this whole concept we call Ceausescu, right? Let's just say that's what John's doing, because he is writing at a time where the suppression is there. The attacks are coming. It's heavy. It's right at their door. So he's writing to the Jewish people in the community and saying, here it is, guys. Here's the 7 churches. And I'm going to speak the Jewish languages of the Old Testament. It's going to require wisdom. It's going to require you to contact your rabbis, to contact your ancient Jews here to really comprehend what I'm telling you. So you better have a Jewish mindset when you're understanding Revelation, because it's going to allude to all Old Testament imagery. And you're going to understand what I'm talking about. So when he brings up Daniel 7, Zechariah 4, Isaiah 14, he's saying? Keep going back to those prophecies, because it's about the messianic kingdom and the destruction of the earthly kingdom. So it's like, oh, is that what's happening? Yeah, this is what we've been preaching about. The new kingdom is coming. It's in the Christ. It's in the Messiah. It's been inaugurated, and he's going to do away with sacrifices. He's going to destroy it, and he's going to inaugurate it. You're going to see it play out. And that's kind of like how you're seeing Revelation. So it is imagery to me. It's Daniel's vision rehashed and repurposed and expanded upon. Now, is it futuristic? Cool. Yeah, I guess. It's still fulfillment, right?
So whether this second beast is a nation or a person, we're not exactly sure as of right now, right? But we do know that there is some kind of figure or some kind of system, okay, second beast, that comes after a first beast or first system. And it has all of the ruling authority of the first person or system, and made the whole earth and those who inhabit worship the first person or system, the one whose lethal wound had been healed. So to me, just reading that in that way, what system or nation came around AD 70 that had the authority of the first system, which I'm assuming is Rome, healed the mortal wound of the first system, which I'm assuming is Rome, and ruled on behalf of Rome? What system would that be?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think when you see the other beasts come up from the earth, so you have like 2 different worlds, the sea, which was Rome. We know that that's kind of how it comes out with 10 horns, all that stuff. And then here he says, coming up from the earth, he had two horns like a lamb, but was speaking like a dragon. He exercised all the ruling authority of the first beast on his behalf and made the earth and those who inhabit it worship the first beast, the one whose lethal wound has been healed. Right. So this lesser
And the
beast
first
is a lesser
beast, we
beast.
agree it's Rome, right? The first beast
Right.
is Rome.
So whoever
This
the
is a
second beast
lesser one.
is a lesser beast, right? So it wasn't someone that had as much authority as Rome, but it was someone lesser than Rome who led people to worship Rome. So I would take
Okay.
this as apostate Israel. These are the leaders of Israel who apostate themselves, became Babylon, the harlots, as the Revelation will talk about them later, call them Babylon, right? So the Babylonians. So Israel apostate is considered the harlot now. It's considered the Babylonian people. It's considered non-Israel anymore. So what they did is,
how do you come to that? How do you come to that conclusion? How do you couldn't anyone put anything in this blank right now?
well, so one, you're going to take the idea of like it has to be lesser than Rome, right? And it had to be
Right.
people. It had to be people who kind of led people to worship Rome,
Yeah.
right?
But have
That's
the
the idea.
okay, so there it's
And
lesser than Rome, but it says he exercised all the ruling authority of the first beast on his behalf. So did apostate
right
Israel rule on the
on
behalf
on
of
Israel,
Rome?
on
Okay.
Israel, right? So just think
Okay.
about this: Rome hired the leaders of Israel, and by hired, I'm going to use it
Right.
loosely, right?
Right.
But the idea is the leaders of Israel were representing Israel. They rejected the Messiah and became harlots to God, right? They were done, but they were the hired hands of Rome. That's what they were, because they're the ones that suppressed Israel. They're the ones that
Right.
led them astray because they couldn't repent because of the leaders. So here you have them saying this is a lesser beast. These are people who exercise the ruling authority and cause people, both great and small, to worship the beast. In other words, they were turning everyone away from the Messiah. So it was like, don't believe in the Messiah. That is turning towards the beast. That doesn't mean worship the beast. It's just don't worship the Messiah. And you need to stop worshiping the Jesus that you're proclaiming. So it did have their
Okay.
ruling authority of Rome, because apostate Israel became an extension of Rome. That was the whole.
Okay.
That's why they crucified the Messiah, right? They didn't want to lose their prestige. They didn't want this Jesus, and they didn't want him to be the king. So they killed him because they liked their own authority, right? So they didn't want to
Okay.
give up their authority.
Okay, let me keep reading. He performed monumentous signs, even asking fire to come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs he was permitted to perform on behalf of the beast, he deceived those who lived on the earth. He told those who lived on the earth to make an image of the beast who had been wounded by the sword, but still lived. The second beast was empowered to give life to the image of the first beast, so that it could speak and could cause all those who did not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He also caused everyone, small and great. This is still referring to, from your perspective, apostate Israel. He also caused everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to obtain a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Thus, no one was allowed to buy or sell things unless he bore the mark of the beast. That is his name or his number. That is his name or his number. Interesting. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has insight calculate the beast's number, for it is the man's number, and his number is 666. So this would all be a reference to apostate Israel that's working on behalf of Rome.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and so I would take
Fire
it
from heaven. Any of
yeah.
that is any of this literal to you?
Well, so if you think of Acts chapter 8, right, with Simeon the sorcerer, he was performing signs and wonders. The Jewish nation at this time, signs and wonders were happening, both right ones and wrong ones, both from the Lord and both from the satanic world. So at this stage, yes, Simon the sorcerer was an example of signs and wonders being performed by their own sorcerers. So the Jewish community did have people who performed signs and wonders. And I do believe at that time, that's what happened. Many people were being led astray because there were Jewish people who were able to perform signs and wonders. They were given that authority, right? I think Satan was using apostate Israel to be able to perform signs and wonders to deceive as many people. I think Matthew 24 says the same thing. And they will perform signs to deceive, even if possible, the elect. So I think leading up to the destruction, kind of like, I think we go to First Kings 22, right? The king Ahaz and the prophet, like, oh man, what are we gonna do with this prophet? Hey, let's go get him to prophesy lies. So what happened? The spirit was released to allow this prophet to continue doing like signs, right? Prophecies and all these things, and therefore led to the ultimate judgment. I think that's what happened towards the end of Jerusalem's destruction, that on behalf of their apostate, through the Lord's working, allowed them to probably increase signs and wonders amongst the people to deceive them because they were already deceived. And I think that was another sign of judgment. So the way I see signs and wonders, I don't take it as normal people would take it, in the sense of, oh, wow, that's an amazing thing. That's not how Jesus actually portrays it. The way he portrays it, he says, a wicked and perverse generation seeks signs and wonders. Signs and wonders were something that were sought out by wicked people, right? So I think the apostate Israel, they were apostate. They were already cast over. In other words, a divorce was done between God and his people at that time, right? He separated himself from them. And the sign of that was he's going to allow them to do signs and wonders, and many people would be led astray, so that when his judgment comes, it's just. And that's what I think would happen with apostate Israel. That's why he calls him the harlot and this and that. And he gets extreme. He goes even more extreme, calls him Babylon, like you're Babylon, right? He alludes them to being Babylon, which we know they're not Babylon, but you get the kind of picture. You are no longer God's chosen. You totally violated everything I've done for you. So I see that.
And we
picture
don't have, and we don't have any reference, like previously you referred to like Josephus's writing, or Josephus, about what was it, that the sun didn't give its light or something like that, or that
I remember reading
the sign of Christ appeared in the sky, or something like that. We don't have any reference historically of any of this stuff actually happening
we do
in Israel at this time, right?
We do, actually. I think
there's a historic account.
Yeah, and again, it's Josephus. Like he saw like
of miracles and like fire coming down from heaven, and
Debo's tired. He wants
power to give life.
No Josephus here. We don't speak Josephus here.
But yeah, no, there are historical accounts.
You guys can stay on and talk until the sun comes up, my friends. You don't have to. You don't have to go anywhere. I just have to go because it's 2:12 and I'm tired. I'm all out of questions. Okay. You guys are like way over my head. I thought all this stuff that you guys are reading was actually literal. I thought I was going to see a freaking something that talks like a dragon. I don't know what that means. Talks like a dragon. What does a dragon talk like?
Literal.
Do you see that? Literal. Did you see that? You're speaking like a dragon. What does the dragon speak like? Is it just, why doesn't it say roar like a dragon or sound like a dragon? It says speak like a dragon. Like that can't be literal. But I want to believe it's literal because it's really
hold on.
Cool.
When I say it's literal, I think I'm referring to he literally saw it in the heavenly space, the same way we described the blanket, right? So the movie unfolded in this manner, okay, for him to see. Then these things happened on earth, or are going to happen on earth, such as there's going to be a first beast, then there's going to be another figure or nation, whatever you want to put in there. Then that first person or nation is going to heal a mortal wound for the first. I think that's going to happen here on earth. I think the second beast is going to be able to call down fire from heaven, and people are going to be like, oh my God, this guy could do magic. So let's follow him. I think he is going to implement a system where you can't buy or sell. Interestingly enough, it also says,
his name.
No one was allowed to buy or sell unless they bore blah blah blah. Where was this? He also caused everyone, small and great, rich and poor, slave blah, blah, to obtain a mark on their right hand and forehead. It talks.
Keep going. Yeah.
It says
right
on the earth.
What?
No one was able to buy or sell unless he bore the mark of the beast. This is the name of the beast. Okay. I'm sorry. It was here. It was verse 14. Or verse 13, he performed monumental signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs he was permitted to perform on behalf of the beast, he deceived those who lived on the earth. He also, he told those who lived on the earth to make an image of the beast. So I don't see this being a reference to just Jerusalem. right? Or Israel. It's a reference to a much bigger
That's a stretch
geographical
for me. Israel
territory,
can't just
you
be
know?
Yeah,
Israel, man.
but what you're
And
what you're
so
saying is though.
that's what I
So
mean by I think it's literal.
yeah.
Is
So
these
Rome
things
is.
actually will play out exactly like this.
But you would agree that the first beast, which is a bigger beast with more authority, is considered Rome. Yet this lesser beast is now a supernatural thing.
Why
You
not? Why
see,
not?
see that
Why
doesn't
not
make
a
sense.
different?
Like
Why Israel?
No, I don't think it's
Why
a
not?
supernatural thing.
Why?
no,
Why not America? Why not the U.S.?
well, because US wasn't existent at the time. Right. So I'm gonna go with the context of where they're at, the habitant world at that
Oh, I see
moment.
what you're saying.
Do you see
Okay,
what I'm
okay,
saying?
okay.
Because you're trying to apply future. Yeah, you're to
I
your point,
understand.
it
No,
could
no,
be
I understand.
America, right? So I'm
No,
looking
don't
at that
say
point.
that. That makes it worse.
Right. So here's how it would have to work out in the futuristic. Rome has to regain its power because that's the wound being healed. Because Rome is the 10 hills and the 7. So you have to believe Rome will regain world dominance. Something about Rome has to come up, and Babylon has to come back
Rome,
up
or
again.
like or the spirits behind Rome and Babylon, because
Yeah,
we
see,
know that
that would be hard because now if you're going to interpret in Daniel and Revelation, it's telling you these are the 10 hills and the 10 horns, the 7 horns, and da, da, da. And that's, you're like, okay, yeah, that's referring to the fourth beast of Daniel, which is known to be Rome. Now we're going to say, yeah, but maybe that's spiritual Rome. Well, now you're doing what? You're spiritualizing it because it doesn't make sense to continue the literal interpretation of how it's originally meant as a fourth beast with 10 hills, the 7 horns, and whatnot, as it's understood to be referred to Rome at the time and in Daniel's prophecy. Do you see what I'm saying? So
yeah. So we're both doing the same thing. Hey, so let me throw in a quick little fun fact.
You like how I
Hey,
just threw that in there really quick?
and it's like
in verse
he doesn't even explain why he said that.
I
He's
know.
like,
in verse
I'm
2,
just gonna
because
trash you.
because
Make everyone believe
you
I
were
trashed you.
because
and
you
then
were
just move on with it.
spiritualizing some stuff,
was
and now
such
I'm
a-
But I'm
spiritualizing some stuff.
consistently spiritualizing it. You're like
such a
only when it makes sense
democratic
for
thing
you.
to do.
Oh no,
Such a
because I don't agree. I don't
leftist
agree with
thing
you.
to do.
I was just saying as a fun little fact. Hey, verse 2, where it says, "Now the beast that I saw," this is the one that came out of the sea, right? With the 10 horns, blah, blah, blah. "Now the beast that I saw was like a leopard, but its feet were like bears, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. The dragon gave," and I think there's somewhere else that it talks about some wings on this thing. Hey, did you know that this literally exists on the planet today? This image that he just describes of a leopard with bear's feet, lion's mouth, and somewhere else I think it mentions wings. You know where this
Where?
is? This is a statue outside the United Nations. Right now, you could Google it. Statue outside.
I'm Googling.
Leopard statue
Yeah, no,
outside the United
they
Nations.
They put that there.
Oh yeah, I've seen this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I wonder if John is seeing visions of the future, and when it comes to seeing the powers that be in our day and age, he doesn't describe, oh my God, the big building from the United Nations, it has 30 floors and 80 windows on each side. He doesn't do that because he doesn't know what a big building is with windows and floors. So what he describes is what would always be outside of any temple, of any city structure, any power in that time. It would be their God. It would be their statues. So I wonder if he's describing a statue that he's seeing in the future when he's talking about this vision here in chapter 13. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's what I would
Maybe the
think.
United Nations is the current version of Rome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there, I don't.
I've heard
have
that.
to
Well, I've heard the
spiritualize
UN
it.
was right. The UN or the United Nations.
Why
Yeah,
not?
I've heard that.
Why not? What did
Yeah,
Rome do?
yeah.
Rome united Europe. Rome united and conquered Europe. What's the United Nations? It's a reunification and conquering of Europe. Just they didn't have to kill anybody. They just signed paperwork, right? That's what the EU is. And there we go. I just did away with spiritualizing it. Now it's a literal physical power on Earth.
You're right. So now we know UN is
Oh crap. Hey, let's play
first
this out,
beast.
bro. Hey, let's play this out.
Listen,
Hey,
you can play this
That means
out
the UN.
as
That
the
means the
beast.
UN's going to receive a mortal wound.
So who's the lesser
And there's
one?
going to be a lesser system
America.
that comes that
America.
implements a freaking vax pass where you can't buy or sell, but it secretly keeps, it's still under the rule and authority
Go
of
ahead
the
and
UN,
play
but
that,
it's
play
like,
that, play that. China,
I don't
China.
have it connected. I don't have it
Well,
connected. Dude,
Hmm.
hey, play it out, baby. That kind of makes sense. What a coincidence that these technologies are being implemented right now
No, so
under these same
if
authorities.
yeah, no, the
Mhm.
thing is you got to expect, whether or not Revelation's alluding to this or not, you got to expect when the world is anti-God, it's going to do a Tower of Babel motif, right? And you see that throughout the whole
Yeah.
Oh
Old
yeah,
Testament. It's
yeah.
good. It
I
doesn't
believe that.
matter.
I believe
Yeah,
that.
and Revelation is just the Tower of Babel, I think, just in picture form. Like they're trying to build a name for themselves, this and that. And look what happens. They're going to make people sell and buy on their name. They're going to rule the world. They're going to make people this. They're going to make. I think that's just the world in general. I think when the world ever gets to a point where they're anti-God, it is the natural falling out of a nation or a people to subdue anyone else who's for God. In this case, in this story, the Christians and Israel, so to speak. We're going to shun them. We're going to destroy them, and we're going to move in a direction that we're going to prevent them from being successful in this land, and we're going to come after them, and we're going to pass laws and rules and ideas that are against us. For example, pro-abortion, same-sex marriage, right? All these ideas that are anti-God, because it forces us. And then what happens? We lose our job. We could do the same thing. Like, dude, now I can't even work because I'm anti-vax, or I can't even work because I want to promote LGBTQIAFF, right? It's like,
Mhm.
that's the world we live in, you know? So
Yeah.
you could always apply this to any world system when it's anti-God. That's why it's like you can spiritualize it for sure, because it's true in every generation. Whatever happened in Revelation is true in every generation, in spiritually or allegorically or figuratively.
Yeah, I mean
right?
that's why it says many antichrists have come and many will come, basically, because that's a universal truth. It just, I don't think that this is just a reference to that
You know, let me ask
reoccurring
you a question, because I've been hearing
fact.
something. I've been hearing something, and Dennis, you too could chime in here. Now, do you guys believe like in a multiverse motif in this regards? Because you guys might say no to
Yes.
multiverse. Yeah. So you probably already know where I'm going with this.
No, I
That
don't, and I don't really believe that. But go on. I just wanted to
like
tickle you.
the human life experience mimics the spiritual realm. So like when he sees the beast in heaven raging war against the saints, that is literally happening in the heavens, and the earth below, and the agents are duplicating that here on earth. Is that kind of how you're seeing this play out? That's why he sees the beast, because it's happening. You think it's literally happening. I think the beast is really
Oh,
out there, and on earth its agents are doing the same thing now. Is that how you're seeing it
hmm.
Wh-
play out? Like that's why
Why
he sees the
would they
beast?
have to mirror? Why would they have to mirror though?
Well, that's I'm wondering, like if that's what. No, I'm not saying
Like,
they
what's the
have
point
to.
of that? What's the point
Well,
of that?
that's what I'm curious. Is that how Ben you're seeing it? Where it's like I saw the beast, and the beast did this, and Nero did that, and the beast doing it in the spiritual realm
Yeah,
is Nero doing it in the earthly
yeah,
realm.
yeah, yeah,
So you're seeing that duplicity aspect of it, right? Where it's like
yeah.
he saw it happen
That's why
spiritually,
I said a week ago or 2 weeks ago that in Revelation, I think we see two realities being described at the same time.
right?
One that is a human trying to describe what he sees in a divine realm with human words, and this is the limitation of his words. But those same exact actions have 3D ramifications, and they play themselves out by saying, if you don't take a mark, you can't buy or sell. He calls down fire from heaven. People on the earth start to worship him. That's what he describes on earth as a result of what's happening in a higher dimension.
So in the higher dimension, the beast is literally there, right? Let's just say the beast is literally there. The dragon is literally there, and they're pulling the strings of the human agents to carry out these things. And through the human agents, they're fulfilling. And whatever John is seeing, he's seeing literally happen in the higher realms,
Mm,
and it's just
yeah,
playing out in the lower realms. That's kind of what you're
yeah,
saying. You
yeah,
see Revelation like that.
yeah.
So almost kind of like a multiverse. That's why I kind of said it
No,
loosely.
multiverse is different.
Right, I
Multiverse
know,
is
but the
that
idea two
this
different.
reality exists infinite number of times. Think of it, use dimensions, use dimensionality
Right.
as
And just
as the
because we don't know what
language.
dimensions are either, I'm like, what the heck, But
We
I can use
don't. We
dimensions,
don't.
right? So we can say dimensions, which is fine. But I think when we say dimensions, like, okay, so like I'm the beast, and I just punched Michael, and then Nero is my representation on earth, and then he just punched the Jews.
I just
You
don't
know what
see
I'm
what's the
saying?
point of that. I just don't see what the point of that would be. Like, how do we even get to that point? Like,
Not that, not that. Okay, well, let's be, I mean, from an
I'm trying to
unseen
clarify
realm.
what Ben
Yeah,
means
yeah, yeah.
by
No, that's
what.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I understand too what
That's
you're
good.
trying to do.
So maybe not the whole unseen realm reality, right? That what's going on up there affects what's happening down here. I think John is describing what's going on up there and how it's affecting what's going on down here in this time in Revelation, whatever time this is, 70 AD or next year, you know. Does that make sense? Because we know this. We all believe this. You guys
Right.
can't deny that
No, yeah.
what goes on in the spiritual realm affects the physical world,
And I
right?
guess I would ask, I would,
So where's the
and
disconnect?
well, I guess to what extent the spiritual realm has an influence, and by
Oh,
what
you tell
extent,
me, bro.
right? And so like if I were to like,
I,
okay,
I
I don't,
personally, I, I think that's the, I think that's the real reality. I think that that's the ultimate reality, and I think things play out here as a result of what happens there. And then, oddly enough, for some reason, what happens here has an effect on what's going on up there. It goes both ways, right? That's why prayer works. That's why
right.
um
And I guess like if I'm trying to paint this revelation futuristic, right? You're kind of seeing it this type of picture. Jesus died for our sins, built the church. The gates of hell will not prevail. The gates of hell will not prevail. The gates of hell will not prevail. And we're gonna go right back to almost nothing because Revelation points a picture as if like it's scarce to be a Christian on this planet at the time of the revelation, right? So it's like, how
agreed.
do we just go from like the church being built, Christ building his people to the time of revelation? There's only like 144,000, or there's rarely Christians on the earth now. It's not that big of an influence of Christianity. Yet the picture you get from New Testament authors and pictures is that he keeps growing his church. He keeps building his church. But Revelation paints a picture of like the church is
But
barely there.
infinitely, like he keeps growing and the gates of hell will not prevail into infinity.
Well, no, because
There's no end to that.
there is an end, right? And we know there is an end, and what that end is, we don't know, but we know there's an end because it's the eternal state, which we call it the consummation of all things, where the king fully and finally returns to say, I put all my enemies under my foot. I'm done. Because that's Corinthians, right? He must reign until
Right.
all his enemies are under his foot. And then he comes to his footstool and says, all right, my kingdom is done. All right. And he gives it to the Father. And that's the eternal state. So he fully consummates it. He achieved his final goal. Now, the question is, what is his goal? Is his goal to bring as much Christians on this earth before he comes? That's the postmill, right? 51% or more is the idea before he comes. That's his goal. Is it a no? We're gonna make Jesus known, and then we're gonna have Christians almost scarce. And just when they think Christians lost, then I'll come back and save the world again. Is that the goal? Or is it the goal of like, hey, I think it plays in the whole divine council motif. The goal is Christ inherited a nation for Psalms 110. That's the prophecy of Hebrews. Hebrews does a good job of quoting Psalms 110. And again, Psalms, I believe chapter 4 or 2, I forget exactly what. And it's a sermon on that, right? And what you're getting is like Christ inherited a nation and he won. He disarmed the work of the devil, Colossians 2. He judged him, John chapter 12. And you're seeing all this in the New Testament language. And then we're called to therefore go and make disciples of all the nations, go and proclaim this to the whole world that the Messiah is the king. And when that happens, when it's fully done, then I'll come. No matter what state the earth is in, whether it's good or bad, it's let the whole nations know that I redeemed the nations and I've inherited a nation, all the nations, right? And that's Ephesians chapter 3.
I think that's us though. I think I've redeemed all the nations. I think that's what Christians are. And once
yes,
he's done with us is when which is what I think we see in Revelation and what I think we're actually seeing now with the rebuilding of the temple, in Jerusalem. I
But you see
think
this in
he
Revelation
turns it,
5.
I think he turns his attention back to fulfilling his promise to Abraham and the other forefathers and to Israel. I think his attention goes
I
back to
agree.
Israel once he's done with us.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, it's 2:30. It's 2:30.
Love you, bro.
I got
Peace.
to
All
cut
right,
it off.
Debo.
Peace,
Hey,
guys. Have a
sweet
good one.
dreams.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Sweet dreams.
who's winning?
Think of the
Who's
beasts.
winning so far? Who's winning?
winning?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But what we
Claudiu,
have
because he's
learned
in
tonight.
Cancun.
He's smart.
Oh, so lucky. Hey, what we have learned tonight, Dennis, is
Yes.
that Ellie allegorizes or whatever interprets
Yes, he did.
a lot of
Yes,
this.
he does. Yes,
It's
he
not
does.
it's not a linear kind of literal understand or interpretation. It's is it
imagery.
allegorizing? Is that what she calls it?
It's imagery, right? So it's like,
what the heck's allegory?
well, allegory is like the Garden of Eden. It's not a little Garden of Eden. It's like a poetic story of humanity's coming into existence, and
A
so
story, poem, or picture
Yeah.
that can be interpreted
So
to
it is
reveal
allegorizing. There you go.
a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I didn't know that. That's how you read this stuff. FYI.
Well, yeah, and Debo, you got to go, so you're good. But
Peace. Good night, guys.
Last question.
Love
Last
you.
question before Dennis. Last question before you
Yeah.
go. But my question's for Ellie. But just stick around. hey. Okay. So, if one allegorizes all this stuff in Revelation, right? They come to a what do you want to call it? They come to a belief like yours. Are you amillennial, or what was it that you are? You have like hints of everything, right? But what's the overarching? Because I can't pick and choose what I like and don't like. But what's yours?
Pre-post amil.
Pre-post amil. Okay, so you got it all in there. Cool.
I got a lot in there. Yeah.
Okay. But if somebody takes it literally, what category would they be in?
Ooh, you can become a full preterist where it was literally fulfilled in AD 70, everything, including the new heavens and the new earth. Like, no, actually, that's out of Christianity. We don't even accept that in Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Okay, but what if it's like me, where it's fulfilled, but the utmost fulfillment is going to be later? What category would that be?
Well, it would be depending on, it's still the questions of when is the second coming, before a literal millennial kingdom, or are we living the millennial kingdom? So he's coming after the millennium kingdom. Like, it's where you put Christ is coming at. That's really where it hinges your view on the kingdom motif.
Before the millennial kingdom, it says that he comes, he wages war against the beast, throws him into the lake of fire, binds Satan. Okay. Not your interpretation of binding Satan, my interpretation. At the end of Armageddon, Christ comes, rules and reigns through the millennium, then is Satan's released again, right? Wages war again. And then when I say Christ comes again, he comes with his bride, new heaven, new earth, right? I'm sorry, New Jerusalem on the new heaven, new earth. Where am I on the scale? What category am I in?
So you'd be a minimum a premillennialist, right? A minimum. And I say minimum because now it depends, like, how would you quantify the leading up to the millennium, right? So now you have the millennium. Okay,
Armageddon.
So now you put an Armageddon. Now you can ask the question, like, okay, Armageddon means what? Is it a fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy of a 7-year period?
I don't know. I don't care about that.
But you have to.
Why?
Because Daniel.
I don't care how long the tribulation is. Or
No.
Armageddon.
I know, but it matters because, so in the sense of, like, if you're gonna say, like, oh, well, you got it, because you got to answer all those
Dennis,
questions.
you could go now.
I was gonna say, I have a question, Ben. Why did you make me wait for this?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was gonna be like a quick. I thought it was gonna be like, you're this and that. I didn't know we're getting back into Daniel.
I'm so curious how long you guys are going to be tonight. That's the only thing I want to know.
Not long. I'm a bounce too.
I'm a bounce too. We'll bounce by one.
Sure. Good night, guys. Love you.
Good night.
See you, bro.
So I would say this.
Why do I gotta go back to Daniel?
Because Daniel.
Because I think the Daniel stuff is fulfilled in AD 70.
Got you.
I think he was talking to Israel.
Right. So if Daniel 9 is talking about Israel, then you'll hold to Matthew 24 being for Israel, AD 70 languages, right? So you're gonna have all that, which means then the man of lawlessness, Second Thessalonians is AD 70. So you're gonna put
Yeah, yeah,
everything in
I agree
AD
with that.
70. Yeah.
You
So
know,
then
abomination that causes desolation, statue in the temple, slaughter of pig, all of that happened.
right. So now
So
what you're so that's fine. And now so you're not going to be a dispensational premillennial. In other words, you're seeing a future event where the second coming will come. However, the second coming will not come until there's an Armageddon battle. And then towards the end of that battle, or at the end of that battle, no Christians being raptured, right? No Christians being taken away out of the Armageddon. No one's leaving the Armageddon.
I
Because
don't know, because
if
I think there's that reference to we'll be caught up at the last trumpet.
right, and that's First Thessalonians chapter 4, right? And it, that would be and that's where you're gonna say like, okay, if I believe First Thessalonians chapter 4, and we'll be caught up, and you're saying like, okay, so when is that? If you're saying like, oh, that's
At the
before
at the
Arma,
at the seventh trumpet.
so now what you did, which I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think you're wrong. What you did is you're saying the Revelation 7 trumpet is Thessalonians' last trumpet.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm
And
saying? So the problem with that is the seventh trumpet of Thessalonians, which is found in Revelation chapter 11, I believe. And you're seeing it's actually in the middle of a tribulation period, if you want to call it a tribulation period. And the two witnesses are being taken up. Now, will you call that?
yeah.
Will you call that the literal two witnesses, or you call that the church?
I don't think it's the church. Literal. Remember,
So then
I'm trying to
stay
stay
literal.
literal.
So then there's no rapture of the church.
Herman Tutnik.
Yeah,
Why?
exactly. Well, because what you just did is equated that last trumpet to Revelation 11, which is First Thessalonians 4, which is referring only to two witnesses, literally. Do you see what I'm
Okay, so
saying?
what is it? No. I lost it.
Okay. So the seventh trumpet is
Yeah.
what you call the last trumpet.
Yeah.
The last trumpet of catching up is First Thessalonians chapter 4, which is his second coming. Do you see
Okay.
what I'm saying? That's the second coming.
I need to read the verses again. I need to read the verses again.
Yeah.
You know what we should do? I wonder if this would be a help. I wonder if we can make a chart and like line it all out where it's like a revelation chart and it's like first trumpet this happened, second this, third this, whatever this, two witnesses, dragon, beast, Armageddon, millennial. So we see it linearly, right? We see it all played out as it's described. Okay. So we have that visual. Then we go to the other verses, Matthew, Thessalonians, Corinthians, Daniel, right? We get those and we're like, okay, so this timeline from Revelation, this is what Revelation describes, is this chart right here, this line, right? Now we've got all these other verses from other books of the Bible, and some, whatever category you're in, whatever dispensation you're in, or eschatology you're in, would put these verses here. Others will put these verses here.
Right.
And
that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like if you're gonna say I believe in the rapture. Okay. If you
I don't know
believe
if
in the rapture, right. If you do, you're gonna say the rapture of what?
I actually
church?
haven't until like a month ago when I remember reading that passage about we'll be caught up at the last trumpet.
Right. First
The dead
Thessalonians
will
chapter
rise
4.
first.
Yes. Yeah, and we can go over it, but that's the second coming of Christ, right? And that would be at the second coming. So that's when he comes, he'll bring the dead with him. So he says, and when he comes, he'll bring the dead with him, and then we who are alive will be caught up, and then we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words, right? That's all it says. Then and that's at the last trumpet. But if you're saying that's the seventh trumpet, well, that's in Revelation chapter 11, which is only referring to the two witnesses.
Maybe there's another trumpet that we missed.
I'm sure there's an eighth trumpet and the ninth one.
I also believe that if there is a rapture, if there is a raising of the dead, if all of those things happen, I only believe that happens like, I think that happens one time. I think all of the references about all of these different things happening, caught up in the clouds, coming down with the New Jerusalem. I think that that's what all of those talk about is an instant transformation of everybody at one point in time.
So you
I'm
don't
not
believe in
saying
like
that right.
4 resurrections?
Resurrections.
Yeah,
No,
see,
okay. Well, I
because
believe
I called
what
that
it
the
says about
rapture.
I believe what it says about the millennial one, where it says that who the ones that are killed for their
The
for
martyrs.
not taking the mark, okay, the
Yeah.
martyrs, doesn't it say they come back and reign
Yeah. So it would says
during the
those who did
millennial
not.
reign?
Mhm.
Okay,
Those
so
who were beheaded
I
for the
believe in
faith.
that resurrection.
Mhm.
Okay. There's nothing
So
there. There's
would
nothing
that would
there
we be
about
included in
people.
that?
No, no,
Got you.
unless we're there and have been executed for not taking the mark or
So
for not vowing
here's
allegiance.
yeah, I got you. So if you go look at the text,
I think we're still the ones under the altar waiting for the millennial reign to be over, uh, so that we can come back in the new heaven, new earth. I think that's the only time we come back.
yeah, so here's the challenge with that.
Where am I, bro?
In Revelation chapter 20, when it talks about these people in verses 6,
What you mean, these people?
well, those people who were doing the whole shebang of dying beheaded for the faith type of thing,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Those
yes.
people. It says, "Blessed and holy is the one who takes part in the first resurrection." That's actually called the first resurrection.
Blessed and holy is
Yep.
yes, yes,
Okay, so it's called the first resurrection. Notice
yes.
the
Okay, so
second
we
death
got
has no
one.
power. Yeah, so the second death has no power over them, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with Christ for 1,000 years. So
Millennial.
he calls the first resurrection people priests of God and of Christ.
Right.
That's what he called us in Revelation chapter 1, verse 4 and 5.
Yeah, but he uses those words a lot.
No, that's the point. When he talks about priests of God, it's always referring to the church. So in this passage, if I'm going to be consistently interpreting that phrase in the New Testament languages, that's the church people, the Christian people. That's
Yeah,
why
but he also says elect. He also calls us the elect. So then when it says if he can deceive even the elect, then we'd have to believe that he's talking about the church, not Israel in 80-70, you know.
right, but no, in that passage it refers to both. That's all. It's not just referring to the Jews, because in the 80-70 it included Gentile Christians, Jewish Christians, and
But
Jews.
couldn't a reference to priests in Revelation 1 or 2, whatever you mentioned, couldn't that also be referring to Jews and Christians? And dude, because I think
That's what I'm saying. It's all referring to
fulfill.
Christians.
I think it could also be referring to Jews, because I think God's going to fulfill his promise to Israel. So
No, I agree.
they too
But
would be incorporated in all of this talk, all of this resurrection talk, all of this first and second, all of that. I think that the 144,000 are just Jews. I think it's just Israel. I don't think it has anything to do
I
with the
agree.
church.
I don't disagree with that.
And aren't the 144,000? I would think that it's actually them that, and I need to read it again, and it's late. I think that it might be from that 144,000, which I don't think is 144,000. I think it's just a lot of Jews. They're the ones that go on living into the millennium kingdom. And dude, doesn't this mean that God's going to establish another covenant?
Mm-mm.
Why?
Because Hebrews already removes that idea of another covenant coming. That's why I think in order to really get a good grasp of Revelation, you should really study Hebrews as well. Because it does do away with all those questions you'll have, like, oh, what about another covenant? Because it brings up Jeremiah 31's covenant
But don't we
promises.
believe right now that there's two covenants existing simultaneously?
No, that was destroyed. So the idea is the old covenant, which was, the most Abrahamic covenant with the Mosaic covenant.
Yeah.
These were all shadow covenants. These were covenants pointing to a bigger picture. When the Christ came, they were overlapping covenants. The old covenant was being done away with until
Israel is called to abide by the new covenant in Christ.
Yes, that's Hebrews. That's the whole point of Hebrews.
But they don't.
Which is why they're rejected. For a
So
time.
is there ever, and then they're going to be reestablished through which covenant?
The new covenant.
Which is the one we're under.
That's correct.
So all of Israel is coming to Christ.
That's correct.
And then they are going to, interestingly enough, they're actually trying to abide by their old covenant. That's why they're rebuilding the temple,
That's
right? Because that's where
right.
they see the disconnect in their relationship to God. Because to the Israelites,
The
their
temple was
temple
God's presence.
was everything.
Yep.
Everything,
Absolutely.
right? I
Yep.
wonder what's going to happen when they rebuild that thing, bro. And
I
when they
think God's
start
judgment will come on them.
re-sacrificing,
Oh, it's
and
gonna
when
be
they,
crazy.
oh my God, dude,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
going to be crazy.
If the Lord allows it to go there, right? I mean,
Oh, I think so. I think that's going to play a big role. I mean, personally.
people would ask me like, what would change in your eschatology if the third temple was built, right? Because it almost alludes like, oh, well, now there's a third temple, and seems to be lining up with all the prophecies of the Old
Yeah, this is a
Testament
great
about
question. Yeah.
right. So I would say at that point, because I'm gonna say this loosely, candidly, not in agreement or disagreement with you, but I always leave it open to a dual fulfillment when it comes to God's work, right?
How
So,
convenient.
well, yeah, because that's how dual fulfillments work, right? So it's like, but I'm still gonna be trying to be like as a prophet, because we're gonna call ourselves prophets. That's what we're called in the new church. We're prophets, we're priests, we're kings. We're kind of representing the king, right? We're representatives of the prophet, priest, and king. So we're priests and kingdoms under our God, unto our God. We're the prophetic voice in this world. When prophets would have prophecies, they would discern and try to understand what the prophecies were alluding to, and they would make sense
Right.
of it. I think we do the same hard work, right? When Matthew 24 is a prophecy, we're going to do the hard work of trying to understand it. We'll say, hey,
Right.
dude, this was literally fulfilled. I think prophets thought the same thing. This was literally fulfilled. But then
just
Christ
like
came,
Isaiah thought that one
Yeah.
was
Oh,
literally
yeah.
fulfilled. Yeah.
And which it was, but Christ but I had a bigger picture
Right,
and a
right.
different meaning you did not understand. So I do believe
Yeah.
Matthew 24 could have another type of meaning to it on a global scale. Sure, because God can do whatever he wants. He can hide that in Matthew 24. He can hide it in Revelation. That's usually how it is. It's hidden and then revealed. If that were the case, but yeah, if you ask me, hey, what would you do with the third temple? I'd be like, holy smokes, the temple did not exist for 2,000 years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
here we are
Oh,
with
yeah.
a temple that represents God's dwelling place.
Hey,
I don't know what I
what
would
do you do with that, bro? What do you
I
do
don't
with that?
know. I'd be
Hey,
I'd be
was
a little,
God's
I'd be
God's
flabbergasted.
present, but it's freaking happening. You gotta be thinking about this stuff because it's happening. Dude, did you know? Okay, you know how they brought 5 red heifers to Israel for the first time in 2,000 years? You know,
Yeah.
they made that transfer. They've already been combed over and they're pure, and they need to be sacrificed. They can't be over 3 years old. I think this is what I heard. I could be wrong, but it's something along the lines of they can't be over 3 years old. They need to be sacrificed, and I think they're like 1 year old right now or something like that. And they need to be sacrificed before they're 3. So they have to be sacrificed within like the next year or 2.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're the one that mentioned it, I think.
and hey, real quick, and there's a lot of rabbis that say, I don't know how, through their writings and through their historic teachings, they say that once the 10th red heifer is sacrificed, that's when they think the Messiah is going to come. How many red heifers do you think they've sacrificed thus far in like in Israel's history?
I have no idea.
Take a guess.
9.
9. They've sacrificed 9. And they think when the 10th is sacrificed, which they have to kill within the next year or 2, they think the Messiah will appear.
Well,
Dude,
I think,
come
didn't you
on, man.
say that there's already a Messiah-like figure? So when you look at the
There
history of the
is.
Messiah,
There is. Correct.
so here's what I remember doing a study on the Jewish mentality. Every generation, there's a potential of the Messiah being
Right.
born. So they're always looking for the Messiah,
Yeah.
right?
But
So
now they've got all this other stuff happening at the exact same time
right.
as they think, oh, we might have found a Messiah in this generation. And it just so happens to line up with the 10th heifer. And it just so happens to line up with the rebuilding of the temple. Bro, there's something crazy happening, man. I think there's going to be a pretty big shift in people's eschatology in the next 2 to 3 years, you know. And I'm just trying to take into account not only what we've been reading and what we've been taught and the different perspectives. I'm trying to take into account what's happening in like the real world, you know,
Right.
and trying to put those pieces together too. Because again, I think what happens there has an effect on what happens here. And that's what I think Revelation is describing. Dude, it's going to get freaking wild. And again, what a coincidence that at the same time as all these things are unfolding, in the same exact time, we've got wars, rumors of wars, famine, disease, vax pass coming, one world government on the horizon. Dude, there's just so much stuff that's like, you can't, it's just way too coincidental to just be like, it was all fulfilled in AD 70. You know what I mean? That's why I'm like, oh, it seemed to have happened on a small scale back here with Jerusalem, and it seems to be happening, or dominoes falling towards it being fulfilled in a much grander scale globally. You know, that's why to me it's lining up for a dual fulfillment. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Can
all I
you
got.
imagine? Can you
Oh my
imagine though,
God.
if it, like, I keep thinking about that temple, you know, where it's like,
Oh my
what
gosh.
if, let's just say we're at the end days, right? The third temple is there. Everything we read about as allegorical is actually about to be literally fulfilled. Second Thessalonians,
Yeah.
the man of
Yeah.
lawlessness
Yeah.
exalts himself
Yeah.
as God. You have all these things. I
Yeah.
didn't think about this. Like, how are we going to be able to decipher and discern?
Oh my God. You just froze. Oh my God. Oh no. Couldn't be worse timing. Oh God. Oh, bro. The worst timing imaginable.
I know we're actually gonna get into a crazy talk and then it shuts down.
Okay. Hey, we'll have this conversation with when Dennis gets on, because he's gonna love it too.
No, listen. I have no problem looking at Revelation as a future. I've always had that mentality of dual, but my mind is I want to interpret it first the way it is, as I see it, as I understand it in its context with Jews and this and that. And it's like, okay, but can it be in the future? Yes, it can. What if third temple comes? Can the 7-year period play out again differently? Yes, it can. That's the idea of dual fulfillments. You know, so I brought this up many times to people. I've had many conversations about a possible. I always leave it open for that because, yes, when you see a third temple, it makes me go, 2,000 years later, huh?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care how you slice it. That's interesting.
Dude.
And that's kind of scary.
I know, man. I know. That's why, like, when you see it, okay, so up until recent times, I think you've got a pretty good excuse for being like, oh, I think it might have been allegorical or mostly fulfilled in AD 70. Maybe we're just waiting for, then you have a new earth and that's about it. But now with the way things are going, I'm like, dude, there's no way. Like, there's so much happening that's verbatim. It's like the powers that be are like going down the checklist of Revelation as to what to do next. You know what I mean?
I know that, yes.
Oh, dude, it's freaking nuts.
It's bizarre. Yeah, but global widely like the UN post the beast of Revelation.
For sure.
Yes, that's just bizarre.
With the same statue, with the same statue that's described in Revelation, man. Like,
so I take it as like, man, is that what John saw? Which is a big possibility. Or are these people mocking God's people?
Oh, bro, hey, get this. It could be both. It could be both. John could have seen it in the future, and because he wrote it down and it's in our Bible, they're mocking it by erecting that statue. Nonetheless, it's still the statue John saw in the future.
Right, like the Matrix.
Exactly. Like any of the futuristic movies where people go into the past and affect the future, right? Dude, and on top of that, now sprinkle in the freaking lights and things appearing in the sky.
See,
And
those things are suspect to me. Not that they don't exist. Like, so here's the thing, right? Like, I can take people's words for it, and the problem is I don't see it, and my eyes
sure,
my mind can't comprehend something I'm not going to see on that
sure.
front. Not because it doesn't exist, just like and here you hear a lot of stories, right? Like,
Did you listen? Did you listen to that episode I sent you?
Yeah, I did. And the thing is, like, and it goes back to the question asked in the text message. Like, how do you affirm something like that? How can you confirm it?
I mean,
Right?
but that's the thing. I totally agree. Listen, there's a bunch of weirdos out there and everybody's making stuff up to get a freaking attention. Okay. So sure, we can't affirm and confirm every single thing we hear, and we should doubt and be skeptical. It's at the point now where it's so prevalent, okay, and it's happening so often that this is why the military, the Navy, the Pentagon, Congress, this is why they're all talking about it now, is because it's been happening so much and there's so many accounts of it. And not just from weirdos in the forest, okay? It's from pilots, it's from radar, it's from all sorts of different sensory systems that have been developed recently that are now picking these things up. So there's just a plethora of evidence and encounters where now they have to start taking it seriously because it can't be denied anymore. You know what I mean? And sure, it doesn't mean every single one of those is real or true. But bro, I mean, come on, we own this. Like, we believe in supernatural beings and demonic beings that come and go in our dimension as they please. You know, I mean, maybe not as they please, as they're sent to engage with us. But we believe that, right? And why is this any different?
And it would be, and again, it would go back to not to say it is, but I got to ask these questions. Like, what did Jesus mean when he said that he disarmed the Satan's work in Colossians 2, right? Or he casted him down in John chapter 12. Like, and it's not just those two, but those are two that freshly
Yeah.
mind. It's like, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't disagree that up until Christ, that was like a normative thing, like constantly demonic possessions, this and that. Not that it's not happening today, but to the extent of how it happened leading up to the Messiah, at his crucifixion and his ascension, he exalted to the highest heavens.
Yeah.
There's been a diminishing of those things. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I agree. There has been a diminishing. I also think a lot of that is now but not yet talk. You know what I mean? Where eternally, from God's perspective, that work is done and fulfilled, and Satan's lost, and all of that. All that's done. It's done. But things are still playing themselves out in time and space because that's the realm we live in, right? And it's, again, it's too close to say it's coincidental that there was an era in pre-diluvian, so pre-flood times, where this is exactly what was happening. Was the demonic appeared, manifested physically, had relations, produced offspring. Like, they owned this freaking place. And that's why God came down and wiped it all off the face of the earth. And now, at the same time as we're seeing all this other stuff with third temple, one world government, all this stuff that we're seeing, which we read about in Revelation, now we're also seeing these things come back into the picture. And that's why when it says that the beast appears and does signs and wonders, calls down fire from heaven, I'm like, oh, holy crap. That's probably just an empowerment from these demonic forces that he's going to claim are alien from another planet or whatever. And that's why the world follows him and worships him as a god, is because he's enabled by these demonic forces that he says he's part of, or whatever, however it plays out. That's just how my mind's trying to paste it all together. You know what I mean? Because it's not a coincidence that this is all happening at this point in time in human history. All of it. This is all happening in the past, bro. All this stuff, in the past 3 years, that it's all been like unraveling to such a fast degree that it's undeniable.
So if you ask me, in my eschatology, like the mentality, because I'm like I'm more amil kingdom now, millennium reign happening currently, right?
Yeah.
You're like, well, how does it all play out?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And the way I see it in Revelation 20 is, while Satan is bound, to your point, and this is kind of what I'm trying to understand too, is since the Messiah, there's been a diminishing of the activity of Satan, right? Yet all of a sudden, there seems to be an increase of the activity of Satan.
Do you think this is his unbinding?
That's kind of where I'm getting at. Because of the first point, there has been a minimizing of it. And now, because we're getting towards the end of it, Satan's now released his word, and he's starting to gather his people, and everyone. So it's like, yes, when you say something like this, I'm like, hey, that's actually consistent with what I'm holding to. Because if you're right, up until now, it's been minimized. Up until now, the activity of Satan has been on hold. It hasn't been allowed to do what we're currently seeing on a global scale. What we're seeing is something today is different than we saw throughout 2,000 years.
Right.
We all agree to that, right?
Right.
So my thought is, and I thought about this, several months ago when people were asking, like, well, how does that play with this, with binding this? I'm like, listen, when he's released to deceive nations. And what I'm seeing now is I'm slowly starting to see all the nations are biting the fruit of a globalist mentality, a worldwide government, suppressing Christians. You haven't seen it like you're seeing it today. Almost every nation hates Christians.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
yeah, we're the domestic terrorists. We're the white nationalists. We're the worst of the worst.
Right. So you're seeing that. So to me, is this the release of Satan? Is this where he's being unbound? Maybe he was unbound, and now again, maybe he was unbound when Jerusalem was returned. Right? It's like, because remember, Jews are still like the harlots of God, right? They abandoned him. Right. So who knows? Maybe he was unbound, and now the Jews were used to kind of infiltrate the world too. Jews are all over the world.
Okay, Kanye.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm a Kanye freak. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there is truth to that. It's not like that's not true. That is true.
Right.
There's been an infiltration of all that. So I'm wondering that at one point, like, if this is the Amil is true, the Millennium Kingdom is now. Can this be the signs of the unbinding of Satan, where he's now released to deceive the nations, to gather them for a great battle? Because that would fall in line with your Armageddon battle, the battle of Gog and Magog. That all seems to point to that type of massive ending.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to that, because I'm a pessimist when it comes to my eschatology, right? I'm not an optimist. I want to be an optimist, but my current events tell me don't be optimistic.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So, but that could be it, dude. Satan is released, and maybe if these activities are real, if I'm gonna go on your premise, they're real. They are actually, from the heavens. They are aliens, what we call, demonic realm, and angels of some sort. If that's really happening, and the activities are increasing to a point where you can't deny it anymore, then I'm gonna be like, we're at the end of the Millennium Kingdom. That's kind of how I chalk it. All right, guys,
why would it have to be at the end of the Millennium Kingdom and not at the beginning of the Millennium Kingdom and leading towards the Armageddon scenario?
Because at this point, like, on my convictions, as I'm just looking at the New Testament, is the argument that the apostles made in the book of Acts, in specifically chapter 2, goes on all the way to chapter 7, and then Paul takes it and runs with it. Chapter 17, calling all the nations to repent. What I'm gathering what Christ did, and it goes back to the ascension of Christ. When Christ was exalted in Acts 1:9, it really was the fulfillment of Psalm 110, where he now sits on the throne, and it says a nation he inherited. Psalms 110 is not quoted in the book of Hebrews, and the whole point is Christ is exalted to the highest heavens. He's the King. This is Ephesians chapter 1. He's exalted above all the heavens.
Can't this stuff all be now but not yet?
That's the idea with the already not yet. But if you have the already not yet, here's the thing: is the already, if he's already reigning, right? That's the idea of the already not yet motif. He's already reigning. He's already the king. He's already ruling. and we are his agents through whom he's ruling on earth, then by default you are saying we are in the millennium reign. That doesn't take away from a potential earthly future reign, right? So I did, like, at the end of 1,000 years, let's just say the 1,000 years is figurative. Let's just go with that idea. At the end of that, when Christ comes, then he reigns on earth literally for another 1,000 years. Fine, if that's what he wants to do.
Oh, yeah. That's what I would consider the millennium reign, right?
Then that's what you would hold the millennium reign, like, oh, that's the one I'm talking about. But I would say that would be another hidden mystery, like a dual fulfillment type of thing, right? Like, hey, he's
But
you see what I'm
at the same time, it also kind of makes sense, because if it's playing out the way I'm thinking, then the same way the Jerusalem evisceration in AD 70 was a foreshadowing of what's coming, so would the idea of a millennial reign happening dually as well. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, because we're again, we said this before, we're describing the same event but placing it at a different time in the Revelation linear account, you know.
Yes. So if you want to agree that the whole book of Revelation is like the end of the millennium reign, it'll be we'll agree on the same events taking place at the end of the millennium.
I don't think it's at the end. I still think it's leading up to it.
Right, exactly. So you'll take that, which is fine, because it's still like, and the only reason why, like, I'll have a hard time with that is because by default, and this is where it gets complicated, is by default, you are now believing in a minimum of 3 resurrections.
We got to chart it. We got to write it all out and chart it.
And that's where it gets complicated.
Because I don't see it. Like, I'm a very visual person, you know?
Right.
So if I don't see where the verses are, what they say, where they apply in the timeline, I can't, it doesn't stick.
Yes, you would have to point to all the verses of the Bible where it talks about judgment first. Like, when does judgment happen? You're gonna have to say judgment happens premillennial and postmillennial. So there's 2 judgments, and at both judgments, he separates the sheep and the goats.
We got to see it. I got to see it.
Right.
Do you know how to use that whiteboard function in Zoom?
Yeah, I can. What I can do is I can actually pull my iPad out and sign in with my iPad as well, and use my iPad as a whiteboard.
Oh, dude, we might want to do that. That would actually be really cool.
And I've done that before with, like, work and school and charting things and documenting things.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And then what we could do is just read. I don't know if we want to read it live, but we could just go through an outline on the whiteboard thing, you know, from Revelation start to finish, put that timeline together, and then dive into the different
beliefs,
passages, you know, in other parts of the Bible, and place those, and then discuss how these things are interpreted by the different views. Because that would be super helpful. I mean, that would be helpful for me, you know.
Yes.
So I'm down.
And it's going to be specifically, and this is why I couldn't be a premillennial, is the resurrection conversations I had with my elders and pastors and so forth. Because of when Christ comes, that's a resurrection, the first time. The second coming, that's a resurrection of Revelation 20. That's the first resurrection. And then after the millennium is the second resurrection of the bad people, right? Or everyone else, doesn't matter. The problem then is what happens to those who get saved in the millennium kingdom that are good, that are not going to be part of the final resurrection, but they're not part of the first resurrection. So
those that get saved, doesn't it say those are the guys that rise up and rule with Christ in the millennium for 1,000 years, right? It says the ones that didn't bow down.
Yeah, that's premillennial.
Oh, you're saying what happens to those that get saved during the millennium?
Yes. You see what I'm saying?
Question: is there any notion that there is death in the millennium, as I see it?
You would have to. The only place you would go to is Isaiah 66 or Isaiah 65, where it talks about a golden period, where that's where people are going to say that's the millennium kingdom. where it says, and the young person who dies at 100 will be considered very young during that time period. So anyone who holds a millennium motif, like the Millennium Kingdom is a future 1,000-year golden period. That's the idea. The year of peace, Satan's bound, it's all that stuff. They're just like, oh yeah. So then what happens? Yeah, people still die, but it'll be like at 100.
Because it does say that the ones that resurrect, that reign with Christ for that millennium reign. I don't think it says they die. I think it says that they reign for the millennium period.
Yeah, they would reign during the millennium period. That's the idea. And who are they reigning over? They would be people who, in your eschatology, it would be all the Jews that were spared, because that's their time of restoration, the 1,000 years. They're giving their land back.
Okay.
So they're being restored. On top of that, Gentiles were spared. So Gentiles are now there as well.
Yeah, survivors, right?
Survivors, whoever the 10th is or 3rd, whoever is survived. And then for 1,000 years, they're going to be living together peacefully.
Yeah.
However, you're going to also have to agree to these things. You can't say like, well, I don't like that. It doesn't matter. You have to agree to it, because that's the millennium kingdom. Sacrifices will be reinstituted.
Yeah.
No. Let me clarify. Sacrifices to Jesus will be reinstituted.
Yeah.
You have to sacrifice to Jesus on an annual basis.
Okay.
If you don't sacrifice to him, he'll curse you.
Okay, I dig it.
Yes. You have to hold to all that.
That's fine. What's wrong with that?
Well, again, this is the 1,000 years of peace, but you're calling cursings. And then Hebrews says he put an end to sacrifices once and for all. Yet in the millennium, we're saying we're going to reinstitute it. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just,
but this also gets to my question of there might possibly be a future covenant, because Christ will be physically present on the earth for the millennium. Your relationship with him will look like something it's never been before under any other covenant. It's no longer, it's actually not even, this sounds weird, but just thinking out loud, it's not even based on faith anymore, because it says, blessed are those who have not seen and believe. But now Christ is there, and there's a bunch of people that came back from death, and they're there too, and they're your bosses.
The problem is you would be creating a whole new doctrine apart from scriptures.
Really? Why?
A third covenant is unbiblical. It's not in the scriptures. There's no hidden covenant. There's no extra new covenant. The new covenant.
But wouldn't arguably wouldn't that be what every previous covenant was at some point? Was a future hidden covenant?
No, so all the Old Testament covenants was considered one covenant. In fact, the author of Hebrews does that. He brings all the covenants up and saying this is all the Mosaic covenant. The Mosaic covenant had extensions of the covenants. The Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic was the ruling law of that same covenant. Then the Davidic covenant was the kingly aspect of that same covenant.
So then what's wrong with God reestablishing his sacrificial covenant with his people, the Jews, but Christ being there present and receiving their worship?
Because in Hebrews, he says, and he's doing away with the old covenant. And
well,
he's bringing in the new covenant.
I mean, this is a merger of the two in a sense.
No, because you got to remember what the author of Hebrews is doing. He's actually invoking all of the Jews, because he's talking to Jews. He says, I'm talking about these covenants, all these covenants we're talking about here. Mosaic, Jeremiah's prophecy in 31. Remember, Jeremiah's prophecy was for Jews first, and I will establish a new covenant with them. And then Hebrews says, and what is new, the old will be obsolete. So he's making this whole argument in the book of Hebrews saying, listen, guys, you guys are missing the point. This new covenant that Jeremiah prophesied regarding coming of the new covenant is to do away with the old covenant fully and completely forever. And then it says what has been growing obsolete will now soon come to an end. He's referring back to the Mosaic covenant, because at the time it was still established, sacrifice this, temple this. That's all old covenant languages. And that's why Hebrews argues, guys, he did away with sacrifices once and for all when he entered the holies of holies, the heavenly temple.
Yeah. Because it points to Christ, right?
That's the whole point of the Old Testament.
Okay.
Was to point to Christ.
But
now that Christ is here, He's not going to save people apart from him just because he wants to go back to old ways. He's not going to do that.
No, no, no.
He rejected them. That he killed them. He destroyed them in AD 70 because they missed his coming. He's not going to be gracious and allow them to miss his coming again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to reread and think about that. Because
read Hebrews first. And I say that
no, I get it. I get it. Like, I get what you're saying. I need to see how it would line up about Christ accepting people's offerings. How would that line up for me?
So when I talk to my dispy friends and elders and doctorates in these areas, and I ask them so what do you guys do with these things? And they're all like, yeah, we hope no one ever asks us because that's the more complicated.
I mean, I don't
because you are going against Hebrews. You are saying he's going to reinstitute sacrifices, even though he put an end to sacrifices once and for all.
Okay, what if sacrifices? Well, what if sacrifices aren't unto salvation? What if sacrifices are unto, I don't know, like it says that our prayers are like a pleasing aroma, to the Lord's nostrils.
That would go back to Zechariah's prophecy of chapter, I believe it's 12 or something, and you would say the literal sacrifices it's talking about is not really referring to that sacrifice. The literal cursing is not referring to that cursing. And this is where premillennials and dispies will have a hard time saying it's not referring to literal, because up until this point, we've been making the argument to take things literal. So they know the hard time of what they're doing is it's hard for us to be consistent and stick to it, because if we do, it's not going to sound pleasing and appeasing to people, but we have to be consistent, and that's hard.
I mean,
so
I'm not trying to be inconsistent. I'm trying to see if there's a understanding that we haven't explored. You know what I mean? In trying to stay consistent.
Right.
Because I don't think consistency necessarily means that it means one thing at one point in the Bible. It has to mean the exact same thing every single time along the way. Like, for example, when it says that we are priests, and then you were saying that, it says in the millennium that the priests, that there will be priests. So that means we're there. Yeah, but it also talks about priests in a bunch of other places, and it's not referring to us. So in the same way, even in the temple, were all sacrifices offered unto the forgiveness of sin? Wasn't there? There was incense offerings. There was all sorts of other stuff.
There was multiple sacrifices. Blessing sacrifices.
Right. They
weren't just sacrifices for atonement, for sure.
Dude, and even in the new heaven, new earth, it says that the nations will come in and eat of the fruit of the tree of life, right? To live forever, which is what Adam and Eve had to do. They had to eat of the tree of life. So even in the new heaven, new earth, there's still something we do in order to maintain our status. You know what I mean? That's not like a far-fetched concept.
I get that. And the challenge would be in regards to the New Testament languages, right? When the New Testament refers to priests in the New Testament, it always refers to Christians. It never not refers to Christians, right? So when you read the New Testament, and that was the idea, because when you look at the Old Testament, priests were only considered the Levites, right? And that's the whole point.
Right.
Levites were just a 12th of the nation. They were a specific group of people. It was only referring to them. So now you have New Testaments no, when we talk about priests, we're like the Levitical priesthood.
Right.
Spiritually, we are them. We've replaced them. So you have that New Testament language. So you have to interpret that way moving forward, because nowhere else in the New Testament is priests referencing Levites.
Yeah, but
right?
but technically the people resurrected would be Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would be priests, but that doesn't mean that all priests need to be resurrected right there and then in order to fulfill that literally.
Yeah, the challenge with that is the first resurrection, right? So when you're calling that the first resurrection, and you got to look into the whole New Testament and say, okay, where else are there allusions and connections to a resurrection of God's people? Right, that's the idea. So, okay, where else is this? You have several places. You have 1 Corinthians 15, right, where we'll all be changed in a moment, twinkling of an eye. We know that passage. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. There's another place where it talks about the catching up with the Lord in all these places. And in all these places, it's referring to the church, right? So it's really hard to go in the New Testament or in Revelation and say, well, in this resurrection, in this area, what's called the first resurrection, it's not the same resurrection as 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Now, I've had this discussion with a lot of premillennials, and I'm like, so how do you do that? They have to say, like, yes, this is the rapture, separate from the first resurrection. Got you. That's the only way you're going to separate. You have to believe in a pre-trib rapture. There's no other way around it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now what you are saying is like, yes, 1 Thessalonians 4 has nothing to do with the first resurrection. Oh, so you believe in a hidden resurrection? Yes, we have to, because it's going to be consistent with how we're doing eschatology. Right? So I'm like, see, that to me, that's too important. Like, I can't see that in the New Testament. Like,
That's why we need the chart. We need the chart. Got to see it all laid out.
Right. And there's a reason why when people like chalk it up to like 4 views is because these battles have been going on for ages, right? It's not like something new is going to pop up like, oh, we did not consider that.
Do any of the views take into account a third temple and everything we just discussed before we got back into this?
Dispensationalism. Yeah, dispensationalism is hardcore about that. I mean, you love Kindred in the sense the church I go to because they're hardcore disputes. Yes, I have a hard time.
I don't even know what dispensational means.
So dispensation is that God works in dispensations. Dispensation just means like house rules. God has certain house rules throughout history, and in every dispensation, there's like a change of rules. For example, like my kid is 6 years old. My house rule is he can't drive. When he's 16, house rules change. As the Lord reveals more, as the people grow more, rules change. That's just called dispensations, right? So in dispensationalism, they're saying like there are different house rules throughout the ages. There's a dispensation of Adam, the Adamic dispensation where certain rules, this and that changed with Noah.
Is this different than covenants?
It is slightly different than covenants, but the covenantals will say like, yes, no, God worked through covenants, not dispensations. And dispensationalism is like 7 dispensations. We are currently living the church age dispensation, like we're the 6th dispensation. According to them, the 7th dispensation or something like that is the church rapture, and then Israel's restoration, physically, literally on earth during a 7-year period. And then the dispensation afterwards, the millennium kingdom. And after that millennium kingdom is the final consummation, judgment, white throne, new heavens and earth. But leading up to that point in the dispensation is the rapture of the church. You're going to have to hold to that view. You're going to have to hold to a view of the church has to disappear. They're going to be gone. They're going to be removed so that the final 7-year tribulation period of Daniel chapter 9 will need to be fulfilled. That's kind of how they're interpreting it.
Yeah, but I don't see that. Like I get the idea of operating in different ways in different times. I understand that and might agree with it to some degree. I don't know why covenants isn't the term for that. I don't know why it's got to be dispensations. And I think the argument for the church having to be raptured in order for him to be able to do whatever with the Jews, I think that's a weak argument. I don't. The only thing that they've got is like, oh, because whatever's holding it back has to be removed, and they equate that to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, well, they're holding it down to Daniel's 9 is a 7-year period, right? The missing week is what they call it. So where did that missing week come from? What is that missing week? They're going to say, oh, that's end of days. Okay, cool. That's end of days. Well, Jesus brings it up in Matthew 24. So what do you believe Matthew 24 is? Oh, that's end of days too. Okay, so if we're taking that end of days, I can see why you have to believe in a pre-trib rapture, because in that language, the coming of the Son of Man, which is not the first resurrection, is the 2 will be walking, 1 will be taken. So you kind of see that picture there now. Like regarding his coming, there's going to be a secret taken away, one versus the other. Some's going to be gone. On top of that, then we're talking about the day of the Lord. Well, what day of the Lord? That's Second Thessalonians chapter 2, which is the man of lawlessness will reveal himself. That's Matthew 24.
Where do you put the one will be taken and one will be left? Where's that play out in your view?
You know, I after we had the conversation last week, I kind of thought about it a lot more, and I think all of that there was referring to AD 70.
Oh,
right.
wow.
So like when he says like regarding that day and hour, like I started thinking more about how you're bringing up Noah and Lot and da da da. I think what he's saying there is, hey, regarding the time period, no one knows, but it'll be like the days of Noah's. Before the crazy thing starts happening, everyone's just going to be going around doing life, and then just like that, tribulation's going to come. One will be taken, one will be left. It's going to be like boom, gone.
Yeah. Maybe.
So I kind of see it that way playing out. The more I thought about it, I'm like, dude, I used to put that at the end of days. So I was trying to make sense of the two different types of endings, right? One is peace and safety type of thing. Nothing's really going on.
Dude, real quick. I only have 2% left on my phone. And then I'll probably call it because I gotta go.
Yeah, I got you.
Dude, another thing regarding the time of Lot, time of Noah, both of those situations. So in the immediate context, we agree it's something that is quick, and sudden, unexpected. We see that from the immediate context. Two things though, time of Lot, time of Noah, both extremely evil, wicked, demonic eras or places that they were in, correct?
I would say debauchery to the max.
To the max, utmost, and demonic. I mean, I mean, they try to rape angels, right? The other thing about that, about both of those eras, is Noah and Lot were notified, right? And Lot even tried to negotiate, right? Noah was notified and actually had 100-something years to build an ark, right? You don't think anybody knew that those things were coming? So the idea of it being like immediate, unexpected, I don't know. They were both kind of warned. They were warned and they had time, and it was immediate and unexpected for everyone else. But for God's people in those situations, it wasn't immediate.
I'm curious how long it was for Lot after he was warned. Because I think there was a negotiation between Abraham and God, like, hey, if there's 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, right? So he kind of negotiates it down.
Right.
Okay, good. And then it doesn't seem like there was a long time in between, but I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't have to be a long time. It doesn't have to be 150 years like Noah, but we don't know how long that conversation lasted for. We don't know how long afterwards it was done. But there was notions in both times that it was coming. And the only people on which it was unexpected or was a surprise were those that weren't God's people in those events, So it's interesting. It's interesting, bro.
Yeah. No, I mean, it says over there, like, he comes like a thief in the night, but you are not of darkness, where it's just
right.
So you have that language over there. But at that language, it says, and then when he comes, he will take his throne and separate the sheep and the goats. So it's like, wait, that's at the millennium kingdom end, the white throne judgment. That's what that is. That he's referring to the white throne judgment there. He's like, but when he comes, he will take the throne and then separate the sheep and the goats. There's no like, he'll take this throne and reign for 1,000 years on earth, then the sheep and the goats. Because the sheep and the goats, you and I agree to this. We always agree to this. Sheep and goats refer to Christians and non-Christians.
Right.
Right? The wheat and the chaff, Christians and non-Christians.
Right.
This happens when he takes his throne. You see what I'm saying? So like, does he separate the wheat and the chaff and the sheep and goats at the beginning of the millennium and again at the end of the millennium? Like that, there isn't that type of New Testament languages of two types of judgments like that.
Yeah,
the throne judgment in Revelation 20 is at the end of the millennium. He takes the throne. The white throne judgment is after the millennium, and that's where the book of life comes out. That's where all the books, all the dead are raised, everyone, and you're seeing that judgment done at the end of the millennium.
Yeah, I believe that. I think I believe that one, but we need the graph. I need to see it.
Yes, I know. The graphing and the picturing. And I did email you guys all 4 of them, didn't I?
Yeah, but that's like we need to read it and go through it and place it
And
on
draw
the
it up.
chart, you know.
Yeah, I
Be
got
like,
you. I
this
got
is
you.
here, this is next,
Yeah.
this is next.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you got a good point. I think we got to look at. Okay, let's look at this coming. This is we call this second coming. Where do you place this on the chart?
Right.
And then you're gonna post all the pictures. Like, where do you place this? I place it there. Well, you can't because that connects to this verse. You
Right.
can't separate these 2 verses. Right. That's the consistency. Like,
That's a good plan. That's a good plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Like, and that's kind of how I approached that first, is I actually started with the end of Revelation and just started asking those questions. Who says this goes where? Who says this verse goes where? Who says this verse? And that's how I first started trying to map out Revelation is, well, who puts these passages where in their eschatology?
Right.
You know, and that's why I ended up like leaning more towards the amil. But that's not to say that's the right answer. I'm like, that's why I lean towards the amil. Like, there were too many verses that were hard to place before the millennium.
Yeah.
But that's where we can do it. It's like maybe there's better explanations as to why, you know. And I went through a year seminary, or not seminary, but it's like a seminary at a church where it was just full on eschatology discourse on their dispensational premillennial mentality. And it was like, and it was like hardcore. And again, it was a doctorate in theology. These guys like
right
part of it. And then I would just ask like 4, 5, 6 questions. And it would always be a curveball, and they didn't know how to answer it because it would put a wrench in their eschatology.
Yeah, that's why I don't think any of the systems like actually do it justice, because there's too many questions, you know. That's why I like to pick and choose.
Yes, that's why I like the pre-post amil. Because there's good in all of them, I think.
I think so too. I think we're going to be caught off guard, you know.
I think, for sure, because ain't nobody in history ever predicted accurately the future except God himself.
Right.
So, all right, brother.
All right, bro.
To sleep,
all right, appreciate it.
We'll get Claudiu on next time.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, good.
Peace.